Testing.
Good evening. Today is Monday, February 3rd, 2025. We are at the Green Ladle and we'll call the meeting to order at 5:31 p.m. with the Pledge of Allegiance. We will start school committee member introductions with Counselor Harriman.
Scott Harriman, City Council Representative to the School Committee.
Donna Gallant, Ward 7.
Megan Hurd, Ward 6.
Iman Osman, Ward 5. Craig Charpentier, Ward 4.
Elizabeth Eames, Ward 3.
Janet Bowden, Ward 2.
Phoenix McLaughlin, Ward 1.
Megan Parks at large.
Jake Langley, Superintendent.
Karen Paquette, Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that members would like set aside? Seeing none, the consent agenda is adopted. Agenda item number 4 is public input. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items now and on agenda items later. Comments that pertain to staff, personnel matters, or a student issue should be directed to the superintendent or the appropriate staff member of Lewiston Public Schools. Public comments shall be directed to the school committee and be brief, not repetitive, and related to the matter at hand. Before starting, please state your name, address, and affiliation to Lewiston Public Schools.
Matthew Egrin, Ward 4. I'm here to ask that your packets be complete with all the important documents before they're published. I compare yours to those published for the City Council meeting, which I've also called out when Kathy and her people have missed documentation or put things in wrong. We, the public, only know what's going on and what's on the agenda or what's in the packet. When it's incomplete or not there, we don't even know what you're voting for or against or even on. It was said at the last meeting, the person whose job it is to assemble them is busy, and that's why they're this way. But I ask each of you, are you voting on what's just in the packet that we, the public, can see? Or are you voting on what's added either before the meeting or here? Many times I've watched Superintendent Langlis put up a screen share as a base what could be included in the packet. That should be included in the packet as a page. Or let me use this week's packet, the consent agenda. There is a business document. We, the public, have no idea what that is. There's a personnel. Once more, we, the public, have no idea what you're adopting. It will show up maybe in next week's minutes, but none of us know what you've just adopted. I assume you all do because you must have the documentation. Why is it not in your packets? This is transparency failure. Because we, the people who are paying the bills, aren't seeing what you guys are voting on. So, we also now in Lewiston have a chance to build the society that Martin Luther King Jr. wanted. One that is not based on race, religion, gender, sexual attraction, but one that's based on individual people. We should be striving for this. Part of that is when we have incidents, they all need to be treated the same. Whether it is a green, purple, red, polka dotted person who plays sports or is in the theater, they all need to be treated equally. The schools need to be a safe zone for all of us, not just for some. If it's not safe, something horrible will end up happening. You've seen it in other places, it will happen here.
Are there any other members of the public?
Ronnie Parity, Ward 6, LRTC Supervisor, Clinical Supervisor. I'm here to talk about policies. I'm really concerned about the policies that are being passed. First of all, we need no cell phones at the high school level, and I can tell you why. I can tell, but I don't have time at this meeting. I've been involved in cell phones at the high school level, and it's not fun. These kids don't even know how to use a book or how to do an open book test. I used to love open book test. What is wrong with kids? They can't read. They have to use a cell phone. And this has happened to me in the classroom. Everything, I want to say that everything Mike Bernier said in his video is true. I have witnessed it, or I've been involved in the situations he has said in that video. So when the superintendent made light of his video on TV, it was not right, Jake. Okay, dress code. We need to do something about dress code. And I'll take to the chair because she was the one that passed the dress code back a few years ago. The kids are wearing nothing sometimes. You could see breast. You could see rear ends. I saw a young girl walking through the high school with a shirt open and a black lacy bra. You ask any teacher and they'll tell you all they see sometimes and everything. Diplomas. What kind? We used to have diplomas for IEPs and kids that were in special education. Why are we graduating those kids with diplomas today, with real diplomas, when they really can't make it even through college? Grading. How is grading done? When Mike Bernier explained grading, boy, it's really complicated. I don't understand what you're doing with grading. Luckily, I know how to grade in the LRTC program. Are they reinforced, the policies, by the teachers? I don't think so. Attendance. How come a kid can pass a course after missing 50 days in school? Is it in their IEP if they're special ed? Maybe. What about Chapter 33? I heard from the state that we might be interpreting it wrong. Why are we not doing some of the things we used to be able to do? And I think we need to go to legislation in the DOE about that. It was safer when my son was in school and he was being restrained. And I didn't mind him as a parent being restrained and taken out of the classroom. At least he didn't do any damage to any kid in this classroom. And I like to know the data on the reading level of the graduates and math level. I bet they don't even know the multiplication, some of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I don't have to press this, do I? I do? Okay. Oh, okay, good. Phew, phew. Hi, my name is Kaylee Pulsifer, and I am a parent of 2 children in Lewiston Public Schools, one at Farwell, one at the middle school. And okay, here I go. I'm going to try and go fast. I wrote this all up. I'm here today to share that I have been wrong for most of my life. As a millennial, I remember when social media was new and shiny and less intimidating than it is now. And I started using it as a teenager, and it has kept me connected to friends and family from around the world, no matter where I've lived. We have been living in this social media age for decades now, where there was once a time when people would keep their thoughts to themselves. Facebook, Snapchat, X, etc., has given our species, the human species, a place to share our contextual self. Connection is now disconnected from reality. Did you know that the human brain is not meant to know more than 150 people? According to Dunbar's number, we are only truly able to create that many relationships. Well, this is something that I just learned, and I have over 300 friends on social media and know more through groups such as the one that brought me here tonight. I'm here today not to discuss social media per se, but to share my thoughts about our society because of it. My children are in middle and elementary school, and both of my children have their basic needs met according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow's theory shows that we have a divide between have and have-nots. Some students have come to school fed, clothed, rested, clean, and some have not. Some have shelter, love, safety at home, and some have not. These children have different needs, and we cannot expect a classroom to run smoothly where some children come to learn and grow and some come to survive. This brings me to the middle school, in which I have a student of the month, a gifted, empathetic, loving, hardworking, civil rights activist student. And when she left Farwell for the middle school, her spirit has been, for lack of a better word, crushed. I am here tonight to ask you all to consider how many people are in your circle of 150 connections. Consider how many hours a day you spend on average on your phone or on social media. For me, it was embarrassingly 5+ hours just last week. Consider how many hours your child is on their phone or tablet. Social media has made it safe to share our rudest, meanest, most unkind thoughts, not just on the internet, but now out loud. We have retreated into our homes instead of meeting our neighbors. I was wrong. I thought my community was the people online. I thought they were the people that mattered, and it turns out you are here. You are my community. You are who I am turning to and asking for help. Education is such a beautiful and powerful thing. There's a lot of information out there, yet from the middle school, I only hear it from my 12-year-old, and I'm not hearing it from people at school. Teachers' hands are tied when it comes to sharing, and I can only assume that behaviors come from no accountability and turning away from the problem. I am asking you, administration, to consider what you are doing wrong, because something isn't right. If we want our children to reach the third level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, love and belonging, a sense of connection to their community, this is not a them versus me. This is us. This is what we have right now. We are holding ourselves and our teachers and our community to a standard that isn't for us by metrics we see on a screen that has proven time and again to share false information. If we want our children to have confidence and respect of others and experience purpose, we have to be honest with ourselves. In safety, people become who they are. And the only way to change the darkness, the only way to repair what is broken, is to admit what is broken. Tell the truth. The truth is the only way we can move forward. When our school is filled with violence, hate, fear, and rage, we have allowed our children to consume so much more than we have ever been able to, more than the human brain was ever meant to. I believe that each one of you is sitting here today because you want to build and connect and build what we do have right now instead of wishing for something that we don't. It will hurt at first, but talking about every instance of terror is the only way to bring back the beauty of a free and public education to my child and yours. After the incident with the pepper spray, where countless children saw and recorded what happened, the administration did not discuss this with my student. I have friends who have been told nothing like bullying happens here. Are you afraid to say the truth? Why? You can only receive help if you ask for it, and parents are tired, stressed, inundated with information from social media by the second. But we love our kids, and we must do better for them and tell them the truth. They already know they are incredibly intelligent. Let us work together to fill in the gaps of information.
Kaylee, can I ask you to wrap it up, please?
Yes. Let us work together to save our children's education. It's not us versus them. It's us. It's not safe when there's no transparency. And it's going to be hard. Please consider, who are your neighbors? Who are your connections? Where are your children and what are you teaching them? We're here to do better, and I know we can.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Swift. I'm from Ward 4 in Lewiston. I was here in the October meeting. I've met some of you through the incidents that happened with my daughter. She was assaulted on the school bus. She was given a severe concussion and spent 5 days in complete darkness. I have gone to you, Jake. I have gone to you, Miss Karen Paquette. I have asked you guys to remove those girls off of the school bus to protect my daughter. There is a pending court case. There are assault charges against the girls that attacked my daughter. You want me to put my daughter on the school bus with the same girls that gave her a concussion. I'm talking. I really feel like it's really rude when you guys are not looking at me. I'm just going to say that. So I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of what I've gone through. I have done 72 days of transporting my daughter to and from school. That is 144 trips just since October 2nd, you guys. That is a loss of $7,200. I'm a small business owner. I own Proper Cuts. I'm owner operated. It is just me in my shop. I shut it down every day to transport my daughter to and from. I'm fortunate enough where I've pushed myself to that position where I have that ability to do that. There's a lot of parents out here that don't. So I want you to understand that the fact that you have put me in that position has now forced me to come a large. To awaken my senses to really what's going on. One of the things I've done is I've created a group on media, which has a ton of parents reaching out to me. I have so many messages. I have one that I'm going to be reading after this from a person who is disabled that cannot make it here today. I just want you to be aware that I am now realizing other situations because of other parents are bringing it to my attention. I'm going to go ahead. I have 1 minute left. The situation that had come about was the bathroom situation. There is girls and boys allowed to use the same bathroom, which is absolutely ridiculous. The no doors on the outside, which I understand kids are vaping. There's been vandalism. I understand why they're off, but I'm going to ask you guys this. When you go home and you get in your shower, do you shut your bathroom door or do you leave it open? That is what you guys are subjecting every single child in that school to. Now, would you want to do that in front of the entire school? I don't think so. So the fact that you guys see nothing wrong with this, mentally put yourself in that position where you're getting in the shower in that bathroom and everybody in the school is walking by. Now, the fact that you have the operations of, a little plaque that says occupied vacant, which when I went to tour the bathroom was occupied and nobody was in there. So clearly it's not being used. The principal told me that there's chains. The one on Yosemite didn't have a chain. So, you guys are violating children's rights. And before an assault happens, start thinking about the policy in the bathroom because there isn't one. And when an assault or a rape happens to a child in there, which you don't think will happen, but you don't know, there is zero policy written in the handbook. I have gone through it. That is a private space that these children are in. And that is all I'm going to say to that. So I'm going to move on now to the person who has reached out to me through my media page as far as, so her name is Christine Adams. And she is in Lewiston and she lives over in Randall. I'm not sure which ward that is. So she says, my name is Christine Adams and I'm the grandmother of a student who attends Montello and LHS alumni class of 2001. I have asked someone to read this as I am physically disabled and work from home. I want to start off by saying that I'm deeply frustrated with the ongoing violence going on at LMS. I've had several issues I'd like to address here. First, being the cell phones at LHS. There needs to be some strict policy in place that teachers should be able to enforce. You are paying these teachers to teach, not to have a phone policy. Phones shouldn't be allowed, not to be phone policy. She missed a word. Phones shouldn't be allowed during class time and only should be used for emergencies. Students need to be held accountable for their actions. 2, academics. If a student can't show up for class time, how will they survive outside life of the four walls of LHS? The student has showed up daily to do work, apply themselves, and are students who should get a diploma, not students who don't show up or just flub up halfway through the semester. There was no such thing as credit recovery class back when I was in school. We had to show up, do the work, and pass the class. Failure to pass the class resulted in 0, and you had to retake it. Stop letting these students walk all over the teachers. 3, administration needs to step up and stop being afraid of parents and coddling the students. Transfers. I had a request for transfer at McMahon for my granddaughter, which was denied because I couldn't transport her due to my disability. But you folks have no problem accommodating elderly people who have grandkids. You allow them help, but not people in their 40s. I also went to my Ward 6, who she said she couldn't do anything, which is bogus because we wrote to you and the school committee votes the superintendent in. So yes, you can do something. It's like no one wants to walk up on anyone's toes. Smarten up people and start this district like it was years ago. And if you can't stand up, then look for a new job. That is a statement from Christine Adams. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak?
Hi, guys. My name is Lisa Jones. I live in Ward 2 and I run a business in Ward 7. I'm here tonight to talk about expectations. I find myself asking frequently, what expectations do we have of children in Lewiston Public Schools? And when I go to Montello to vote, I see that our expectations are be kind, be safe, be respectful, and be responsible. But we all know that that's not all that happens inside those schools. We see and hear a lot of behaviors that don't meet that criteria. So then what happens? If children are not safe and not respectful and not responsible and not kind, what do we do? Do the expectations change for different children? Do we have the same expectations for all students? Are we treating them equitably? Are we expecting that they all come to school and behave in a safe manner? Member Osmond has asked on 2 occasions for a multicultural committee, but if the same rules and expectations are applied to all students, then there's no need for that. I think we have to have clearer language and expectations with our students from pre-K on up. My personal educational philosophy as a former public school special education teacher is that children will meet the expectations you set of them. This committee and Lewiston teachers seem not to have expectations, but seem to have a litany of excuses. They need to demand better from the students they teach because the students are capable of doing better. Instead, we constantly hear why they can't. Giving Student of the Month to a child who had concussed another student sends the absolute wrong message to students. Expect the kids to do better, enforce the expectations we have, and LPS will start to be a safer place for everyone. As a side note, I have asked for organizational charts for the public to see in preparation for budget season, and I believe you guys are still working on them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak?
David Rackmales, Ward 1, 20 Walker Avenue. The most important responsibility of this committee is performing oversight of the school's administration to assess performance and ensure accountability. While we can and should celebrate the stories of student success, the community needs honest and difficult conversations about where and why the schools are failing. These failures represent one of the biggest factors holding back the economic development of our city. Some courageous teachers and staff took steps in October to start the conversation. We've also heard from community members about perceived inequities in the handling of rules and privileges that foster mistrust and jealousy and inflame tensions between groups and individuals. What it sounds like from the outside is that in at least some of our schools, a toxic culture has set in, with fear and mistrust on many sides. The committee must get to the truth of the situation. It should ring alarm bells when teachers and staff express a fear that raising concerns will cause them to be targeted by both the administration and union leadership. Likewise, when we hear of parents who are afraid to raise concerns because they fear their children will suffer adverse consequences. The committee needs to hear all of their stories, and you must establish a mechanism to do so. An ombudsman would give teachers, staff, and community members a resource to provide counsel on dealing with their specific situations while remaining anonymous. It would also give the school committee an important window into what is happening inside our schools. This would be just one of the necessary reforms that would send a message to the community that something is being done. There will need to be other steps going forward. I was fortunate enough to spend a good portion of my career at General Electric, which had a leadership culture which was quick to recognize failing organizations. They would take swift, decisive action to turn them around by replacing the leadership and terminating or reassigning those responsible. At some point, that might be what is required.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak on non-agenda items?
Hi, my name's Melissa Dunn. I live on Blake Street in Lewiston. I hear a lot about punitive discipline measures today. Part of mitigating violence is alternatives to justice. This is something that's talked about in restorative and transformative justice. It's why it's easy for white supremacist Ryan J. Murdo to reach out to white mothers and families when there's incidences of violence. It's why men in uniform threaten and attempt to choke students repeatedly, infantilized by white women mobbing. He had a right to, because the youth in their rebellion attempted to pepper spray, all in efforts to increase racialized tensions, ends up recruiting and reeling in people just by their anger. Although restorative justice is designed for the carceral system, its efforts are to prioritize survivors of violence, offering alternatives and pathways to justice when abusive and neglective systems fail us. If families and people impacted are not feeling that they've experienced justice because the system is flawed, because the system is unjust, because the system is punitive and violent, it means those in decision-making power are saying they're doing restorative justice and its practice is not being utilized or offered as an alternative. In efforts to mitigate racialized and systemic violence, I'm informing and encouraging people who work with the schools, the boards, restorative justice practitioners, and community to utilize restorative justice when families feel injustice or indicate, even in subtleties, racism or other isms, to rely on restorative justice as alternatives to incidences, or consider when there is a risk of racialized tensions, hate, racialized or gender-based violence. Circle without power holders present should be an option if there's held contentment or resentment towards a power holder. If restorative justice practitioners are seeing or hearing something in community or the news about incidences that risks increase of racialized tensions or escalating in violence, consider outreach and volunteer your time to create sustainable networks and systems of restorative justice and practices. My recommendations for the school is ongoing circle support for staff and power holders, circle support for survivors and families impacted, knowing how to navigate the system when police are unresponsive to hate, racialized harm, and violence involving radicalized and/or radicalization. Somehow, community, hopefully, can have an on-call or chat support or app support, restorative justice and transformative justice education and training, and alternatives and a protocol for families and schools and power holders, especially when they're contacted by white supremacists or other credible threats they may experience, when there's discourse, especially when they have made blatant threats to target certain groups in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak?
How we doing tonight, folks? I'm just a concerned community member. My name is Annabelle. That's what you all can call me by. Some of you I know, in other formats, some of you I don't. Let's all just take a deep breath for a second. It's been a real heavy night. There's been a lot of serious things going on. Some of these things I'm not super informed on. Definitely a concussion is certainly serious, and I think that that's understandable why some people are upset about that. The only reason I'm here is to just make sure that people aren't catching strays unnecessarily. There's some interesting bathroom discussion going on. So I just want to reinforce that what you all have been doing since 2020 run around trans people is a real good thing. And I really appreciate that. You should continue doing that despite outside pressure. I know that you all have been dealing with ICE recently and trying to figure out how to navigate that. And I appreciate everyone who has been working to make sure the kids are safe. Do not have to worry about strange political consequences that have nothing to do with them. So I want to thank you all for the work that you have been doing. I want to thank you all for the work that you continue to do. I hope that people who are maybe opposing those efforts come along and maybe see the light. I hope that you take the concussion situation seriously, but also I think that it's important to remember that these are children. And sometimes we make mistakes that have really serious consequences. Sometimes those things result in lifelong consequences for people. But having a punitive mindset that creates more pain for everyone doesn't fill anything. You can't undo the concussion at this point, right? The important part is that like all of these people can continue to grow as human beings and hopefully become successful adults that don't repeat these mistakes. And there's a lot of ways that we can navigate that conflict. And I think there are some ways that we navigate that conflict that honor the humanity of that honor the naivety that a lot of these people have. And I trust that all of you are going to make informed decisions around that because you know the details. I don't. Right. But I just want you to remember that like the people going through your schools are children and they're just trying to grow. They don't know. And there's a lot of things that they don't understand. And I want you to give them that humanity, give them that respect, and make sure that when we're talking about things like conflicts that have serious consequences, that groups and people that have nothing to do with that don't catch weird strays around policy for that. There's been some weird conversation that's happened tonight, and I just want to make sure that we stay focused on what's actually important, and that's the kids that are involved and making sure all of them continue to grow and become successful adults. Thank you all.
Thank you. Any other members of the public like to speak? Seeing none, we will end public comment. Agenda item number 5 is to receive and potentially vote on a field trip request for the AVAC Gifted and Talented Contemporary Affairs Group to attend the Camden Conference.
Hello, I'm Keith Levesque, Lewiston High School social studies teacher and Lewiston AVAC Contemporary Issues Advisor. So Contemporary Issues is a social studies related gifted and talented program. About once a month, I take 6 or 7 students to Bates College, where we meet with other area groups. Every year we tie the topic to whatever the Camden Conference topic is for the year. So this year the topic is Democracy Under Threat, a Global Perspective, which unfortunately is an issue not just happening around the world, but is a concern in our own country as well. So the conference always takes place around February break. This year it's at the tail end, so the 21st to the 23rd. So I have 4 students who are looking to attend this year. Like last year, we'll be able to attend at the Camden Opera House, where the speakers come. I mean, these are experts in their field from around the country. There's professors from Harvard, Columbia, NYU, London School of Economics. The keynote is Maria Ressa, who's a founder of Rappler, one of the top digital news organizations in the world. And she's been fighting for years against attacks against civil liberties in the Philippines and Duterte. She won a Nobel Peace Prize for those efforts. So just an incredible learning opportunity for our students. It's all paid for through donations to the Camden Conference Education Committee. So I'm here just to seek approval to take students over that weekend. We'll be staying they put us up in the Rockland Harbor Hotel, where we stayed last year too. It was a phenomenal experience. So I just seek your approval.
Any questions, comments, or motion? Member Hurd?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the AVEC Gifted and Talented Contemporary Affairs Group to attend the Camden Conference.
Thank you. Seconded by Member Bowden. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Enjoy.
Thank you very much. We will.
Thank you, Keith. Agenda item number 6 is to review the financial audit with our auditor.
So thank you. Last year, you'll probably remember Adam and I did a presentation on the audit. But this year, I think after talking with Finance Committee and statutory requirements, we've asked that Ron Smith from RHR Smith, our auditing company, to come and walk us through the audit and answer any questions. This is a non-agenda item. This is just to review the audit. So not a non-agenda, non-voting item, excuse me. So I'll invite Ron to come up and talk. I heard non-agenda item too many.
I knew what he meant. Good evening. I'm Ron Smith, Principal, RHR Smith and Company. I've got the pleasure of working with 80 other professionals We do half the school systems in the state of Maine, half the municipalities in the state of Maine, all but 2 counties. So we know all about the world of government that you live in. So if you have any other questions or want to use me as a sounding board of what's going on out there, here I am. But I'm here to go over the audit for 6/30/2024. I think you guys all have a copy of it in front of you. I'm going to flip to page 4. Actually, I'm going to flip to the first 3 pages before that. That's our audit opinion. You received our highest audit opinion that we can offer. It's called an unmodified opinion. If we had disagreements with management, if the math was wrong, if we had reason to believe that there were scope limitations because you didn't allow us to talk to your attorneys, and if we did, we would have found out upon further review, you had multiple lawsuits that could have had financial impact. We'd have to note it right there in those first 3 pages. We did not. You received our unmodified opinion, which is the highest opinion we can offer. Page 4, statement 1. There's your financial balance sheet as of 6/30/24. You'll see all the funds, all the school department funds, that we've audited. We audit the city as well. We actually lift this out of the city's document and prepare it for you all so that I could sit here in front of you and have this conversation just pertaining to the school. So the general fund. I'm in the first column. That's your everyday $100 million. Let's educate the kids budget, right there with your 11 cost centers. So you can see that you've got $26 million worth of total assets. I'm still in the first column under general fund against liabilities and obligation of about $9.3 million on 6/30/24. Okay. That leaves you with about $16.5 million, a little north of that, of carryover balance going into this fiscal year that'll end on 6/30/25. That's a little down from it was the year before, but you actually had a planned spend down because I believe in 2024, you guys used $5 million for tax relief. And I believe this year that's going to end 5 months down the road, you guys used $6 million. So what'd you do? Took what you saved in this last budget, largely because some of the revenue estimates came in over projections, and largely because of some of the expense budget came in under what you estimated. So you in turn turned around and used that for this budget that we're in for 6/30/25 and lowered your mill rate here in the city of Lewiston for education service. So to spend that, the $6.7 million that you have of general fund, unassigned fund balance, that's the third number up from the bottom. That's really not, that's the math that's not attached to anything. That's not attached to your $3 million of capital reserve funds that you guys have set aside, the little north of $6 million that you use for budget relief in 2025. And there's some other things up there, such as prepaid items in our accounting world that we have segregated and restricted. But your undesignated is about $6.7 million. Statutorily, that's a conversation piece. The statute says that you can retain about the equivalent of your 1 month of your operating budget. So based upon an operating budget of $100 million-ish for the city school department, that's about $8 million. So you can see, and you have been for the past few years, you're below that statutory requirement, right within certainly, the compliance, piece of that statute. So what you don't see on this is the $24+ million of federal funds that also runs through the Lewiston school system. Most of those are on a reimbursement basis. Food service, local entitlement for special education, Title I, all your entitlement funds, Title I, II, III, ESSER funds, which have gone away, as of December 31st, 2024, ARPA funds at the city have gone away now, because of the statutory release of that money. ESSER funds for the school district, that was the education name for ARPA funds is the best way I can say it, for relief for education. That money's gone, for all future purposes. Now we have a new relief package that we thought we knew what it was before this presidential election, and now we're not sure what that looks like. We know this state has a lot of infrastructure money for public government. We just don't know what's going to happen with it now. We're certainly, as you all are, waiting on details to see what the impact is going to be to local government out there. But our state at one point in time, and still does, has $2.5 billion in it for infrastructure needs at for the local governments. So we just don't know what that's going to look like now. So, and I think there's a lot of people sort of on edge to kind of see, where this administration is going to take it and whether or not there's going to be any maneuvering, of that money for other certain needs, whether they be federal or state. So that's your general fund budget there. You can see to the right and left, you got a bunch of other things with food service, with various grants that you've run. That's the column I tried to hit on, the $25 million that runs through the school system in addition to the $100 million budget that you operate. You're a busy school system. There's zero doubt about that. So, yep. I'm going to flip to the next page. It just kind of shows you the statement of budget to actual. That's an important thing. We've got some cost centers. With overall, the budget was underspent by almost $3 million. Okay, so the good news is as I said, you largely are returning $3 million back to the budget. You thought you needed $5 million to settle it. You didn't. You really needed $2 million this past year to make all the math work to fund the cost of education for this last fiscal year. So revenues came in over than expectations to the tune of $1.5 million. Same with expenses. There's a couple of cost centers, facilities and maintenance being one of them. And the statute basically says, don't have to go back to the voters. What you got to do, provided you don't overspend your budget, which you didn't, you have to move some money from some of the unspent cost centers to cover some of those. So Adam and I will work out the language of that to bring to you for next board meeting, now that this audit is done and finalized. So, yeah. That's about the talking points, you all, of this product and document here, right now. There were some best practice issues, that we noted, largely in part with the kids' money, with the money that's located outside your general operating budget, sitting and residing in the individual schools. I know Adam's been more of a steward, right now as far as going out and policing those funds for best practices. But there's a couple of management comments certainly on, on that, just to, what we see as your outsiders look again, how to handle that money better. So.
Are you prepared for comments, questions?
I am prepared for whatever you guys throw at
All
me.
right. Did you have anything else you wanted to add before we go to the committee?
No.
Okay. Does anyone have questions? Member O'Laughlin?
Could you say the revenue, you mentioned that revenues came in a bit higher than expectations.
Correct.
What was the source of that?
Let me tell you, and I'll bring you right to the page so you can see. So state education subsidy was the biggest one that came in more than your expectations for 6/30/25. I don't know if you're going to land that this year for 6/30/24. I'm not sure that's going to follow suit for 6/30/25 though.
So just a little more detail. That's our multilingual hardship additional funds that we received.
That is on page 6, and it will be, if you go all the way to the right, you will see that is the third number down in that column. I'm not sure that's going to hold suit in 25 for you, but I know that that was the case for this year, 24. And certainly, whether it's tonight or any other night, if there's any follow-up questions, if you want to direct them towards Adam and Bill, more than happy, to certainly provide any answers you all may have.
On page 4, 1, 2, 3, 6 numbers up from the bottom, it says capital reserve, 3 million. Is that the money that we voted to set aside last year?
Correct.
And that will apply to some of the special ed stuff? Is that? No, I don't remember.
So that one's actually facilities.
Okay.
You had a reserve set up the year before for special education, and we have been in and out of that.
Okay.
And we've pulled that out of everything, so it's not, so anything that needs to be attached for capital reserve for budget relief, we've pulled that out, to basically get the math down to the third number up from the bottom, that's $6.7 million. So all that other money has been set aside by either statutes or by wishes of this board.
Member Eames?
Sorry for my ignorance. You said that the statute says we need 1 month reserve and we don't, we have less.
Yeah,
Is that good or bad? Like, I don't know whether we're supposed to have at least 1 month or.
So a couple of things. When
no
you have
more
the
than.
second highest, largest budget in the state for education, that's not a good thing. 30 days is not. That's a telephone call, so I'll start with that. So I can honestly say that a lot of school systems are between that 30 and 60 days, usually between 45 and 60 days. So compare you, and I don't like to compare you to anybody else, but because it's really hard to, but with a size and a magnitude of a budget like yours, $6 million is not a lot of money, as we can all know, and the statute, all it is kind of a blueprint and a baseline, because what that statute says, is that here's a recommendation from us in the statute, but it also gives you 2 years to do something about that to bring you into compliance. So what could you do? We haven't funded our capital reserves. We need money. We're going to build a new middle school. We're going to do a renovation. Okay. We're going with a green roof. I'm just giving you some real life situations that our schools are going through right now. So what do? They know in 3 years they're going to put up or renovate a middle school, a roof, a boiler. So they'll set money aside in their budget, and that'll help them, certainly mitigate and move that money, which the statute allows you to. But you've got 2 years, 2 budgets to basically move that. That's what the statute says. So it's like, oh my goodness, our year's all over. The auditor's telling us 6 months to letter, confirming what our finance department's been telling us. Doesn't work that way. Skips a budget. So.
Any other questions? Member Bowden?
It's not a question necessarily, but I just wanted to see if we could open it up to public comment, if anyone in the public has any questions.
Are there any other members of the committee that would like to comment or ask a question before we go to public comment? Did you want to add anything before we go to public comment? Okay. Yeah, we're going to open it up for public comment now. If anyone, if you want to come to the mic.
While you're doing this, we used to, when I was on school board.
If you want to get on the mic, Ronnie.
Okay. Why don't we get the books to look at as taxpayers and everything? When I was on the school board, we had extra books that we could look at during the meeting to look at the budget. We are paying, my taxes went up $600 last year. Why aren't I knowing what's in those books? It used to be public. We used to do it at school board meetings, and our superintendent, Lee Levesque and Bob Connors and all of them let us look at the books. Why can't we have the books to look at during meetings? Thank you.
And I also believe it's a public document on the website.
I was going to ask if it was on our website somewhere. Yeah. Adam is confirming it will be on our website tomorrow. Any other comments or questions from the public? No. All right. Oh.
I do want to thank Ron for all his work, but also our team, Bill, Adam. I know Jackie's not here, but Jackie is priceless as far as her level of detail and her scrutinizing what's in and out. But we are very particular about budget and numbers, and it's very important to us to be good stewards with public dollars. So to be accurate is important to us, and we were accurate. So I want to thank the team for their work on that.
Yeah, and we thank them too. Like I say, this conversation just doesn't happen overnight. This is an 8-month-long process. And I'll tell you, when you're able to get information delivered to you so we can sit here and really put a 150-page document together, of which we've extrapolated 20 out of it for the school department, kudos to your people, for sure.
And thank you for making it understandable for us that don't look at numbers all day. I appreciate that a lot.
Anytime. And if there's any other follow-up questions, please just direct them through Adam, Bill. Let me know.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, member.
I got to go. Bye.
I actually would have appreciated having this before the meeting myself. It just landed on our desk right now. So in general, in principle, I would affirm that I would like to see things before the meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 7 is to review and potentially vote on the second read of the following policy, IJJ.
So IJJ is the instructional and library media materials selection. There was a group of these policies together that some were deleted, some were adjusted. This particular one, the librarians wanted to give it another look before I brought it back. We brought it back for a second read, and they have done so. And there was no changes from the first read. I would have noted that for you if there had been. They had a chance to take a look and were good with it. So bringing it back tonight just for the second read.
Any questions, comments, motion? Member Bowden?
I'll make a motion to approve the second read.
We don't usually do public comment on it, but there's no reason why we can't. Okay, are you okay with holding off on your motion?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. Please just state your name.
Jay Zimmerman, Ward 5. I teach at Montello. I'm concerned about some of the wording in section F. So the original wording of this passage says, provide comprehensive and accurate materials that are inclusive of cultures, languages, and discourses that reflect and examine the racial, class, ethnic, gender, and religious diversity of the United States. The changed language says, give comprehensive, accurate, and balanced representation to minorities and women in history, science, leadership, and the arts, and acknowledge the contributions of ethnic, religious, and cultural groups to our American heritage. Do you see what's lost in that change? First off, you're erasing a class analysis of the history of the United States, which is a very real and very important piece of our history and present. All right. Second of all, who are the minorities we're speaking of? In global terms, the minorities of Lewiston are not the minorities of the world, right? Talking of people as minorities is talking down. There are more genders than just women, right? And providing accurate and balanced representation to minorities and women still implies that the baseline is male and white. And that's going to stay where it is, but we'll just also add some things in there about minorities and women, right, to keep people like me quiet. I'd also like to take issue with the use of the word American instead of the words United States. America is a continent. There is a North America and a South America. There's way more than the United States in America. So using the words United States is far more accurate if the intention of this section is to talk about the United States. That all making sense? Okay. Now, I don't know if you have a chance to go back and change any of these things, but it's a real concern as someone who's teaching students in the classroom. And again, I come back to this erasure of the class analysis here. We have to be able to talk about class issues. It's at the root of so many challenges that we're facing as a country, as a city, and in our schools. Thank you.
Does the committee, are there any other members of the public that wanted to speak? Sorry, before I go back to the committee.
I was going to say thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jay.
Good evening, Chairwoman Park. Appreciate, and the board, appreciate your time tonight. I wasn't going to speak, but I will to these changes.
Could you just identify yourself, please?
Alan Sarvinas.
Thank you.
My name is Alan Sarvinas, state leader for Parents' Rights and Education Maine. We work with school boards with policy and also parents to show them effective ways to force change at the school board level. This policy, IJJ, we recently worked with MSAD 52, and they were able to roll in language that allowed transparency for the principals and school board members, which immediately resulted in certain content not being used. Also, regarding the new language, affirmative action is unconstitutional, and that's what this language does. There's no reason to treat children like tribes. They only know they're in a tribe unless someone tells them. Also, the content that the woman was just speaking about falls under the PPRA, Protection of People's Rights Amendment, which guarantees every parent's rights to their own beliefs. And if this district is going to infringe upon those beliefs or even ask them about those beliefs, they're allowed to opt out. So please keep that in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wanting to speak on this? Nope, we'll go back to the committee. Member Eames, did you have your hand up? No, I thought somebody had their hand up. Counselor Harriman.
Thank you. I guess my question is for administration. Do we know why that language in section F was changed? I mean, with gender being flattened to just basically just women, and then we are taking class out of there. And then I assume minorities is to refer to the racial piece that was taken out, but it isn't specific there. So was there a reason as to why this wording came about?
So the recommended changes came through Maine School Management, the Maine School Management suppository that we use. I don't have the background as to why the changes were made. These were the recommendations that, based on our previous policy and the new sample language that we pulled from. And I'm happy to get that information if that's something the school committee is interested in.
Okay, thank you.
Member Eames?
Do we have to follow MSMA language? No, I wanted to get that out on the table, yeah.
We don't have to, and typically any changes that are there, the explanations we typically get are that it aligns to some new law or statute. Yeah.
Does the committee want to vote on this tonight? Do we want to send it back to the policy committee to work on a little bit more, or what does everybody feel comfortable with? Member Osmond?
I would like not to vote and have more information.
Okay, any other opinions? Councillor Harriman?
I would agree with that. I take responsibility on myself for not, not reading this through thoroughly enough and not noticing those before. And I thank Teacher Jay for bringing those items up. I think that it should have another review to address some of those issues.
Councillor Charpentier, sorry, Member Charpentier?
I agree 100% with Member Harriman.
Any other opinions? No? All right, so sounds like
Okay, we're gonna talk about it again.
we're gonna not vote on that tonight and send it back to committee. All right, agenda, thank you everyone for your comments. Agenda item number 8, to review and potentially vote on procedural rules.
So thank you, Member McLaughlin, for sharing some edits to that. And we had posted the changes to procedural rules, which were mostly heavy on our structure for voting for a chair. The biggest notable change, well, we just did this process. It seemed to work, but I think the biggest change that I see is that the committee at the time made mention to, but then also put in this language that you have a neutral person or the superintendent govern that little piece of the meeting so that there's no sway of power, authority, or people in a certain position. Did anyone have questions about other pieces of the procedurals? Yeah.
Member Eames?
Just wanted to remind people that also there's the vice chair is gone and the parliamentarian is appointed.
And that was
Those
in
are
the
changes.
updated version that was sent out later this afternoon. It wasn't in
Yeah.
the original
So I just
agenda
wanted
packet.
to
Yep.
say it out loud.
Yes. Member Bowden?
I believe it also said something about the legislative liaison being appointed
Oh,
by
yeah.
the chair
That's
and then
right.
not needing
Not needing a vote.
a vote.
That's what it
That's how
said.
it's always been.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just didn't know if everyone was comfortable with that because I couldn't remember if we discussed that or not. I'm fine with it. And
No
I
one
know
ever wants
Elizabeth
to be
likes
the
it, so I'm
legislative
fine with
liaison.
Elizabeth staying in that
Yeah, I
position,
think
but
that's how it ended up that way.
Yeah.
but I also,
This is forever, so we need to think about that.
It's for until next year.
Well, that's true, but
right,
it's
like
default until next year.
Right, yep.
so I'm okay with it. But I do think that just for fairness,
Mhm.
I think there should be a vote for everyone on the school committee as to positions like that. I don't think it should just be you're going to be that person.
So was the parliamentarian?
But I'm
Sorry,
fine with
what
it for
about the
this year because you
parliamentarian?
enjoy it and I personally don't want to be the liaison, so I'm happy that you are willing to do it.
Right.
So I'm just gonna leave it at
I'm
that.
just trying to remember, is it parallel to what the parliamentarian?
Historically,
is?
those two roles have been assigned as needed. Like they're not mandatory roles, they're assigned as needed and like somebody usually volunteers for either of those. That's how it's,
So,
it
and they're
has been.
parallel in the rules?
Yes,
Okay, as long as they're parallel in the rules.
yes, Member McLaughlin.
Yeah, I was just going to speak to that. I ended up trying to, sure. I started making some edits to this actually when I was looking at the parliamentarian piece because that I had expressed interest in that. And I realized that actually in the policy manual, it said that the parliamentarian should be voted on. But the rules didn't say that last time. So what it used to say is that the legislative liaison just appointed by the chair, no vote. The parliamentarian just appointed by the chair, no vote. That part, though, conflicted with the policy. We didn't have a parliamentarian, so it didn't matter. So I ended up editing that part to align with the policy. And then just the other stuff was all stuff that we discussed. So that.
And now
that's
I
just
think
a-
we should make them parallel.
Yeah, so I think if we want to just vote on both, I mean, that makes some sense too. So I think either way. Both of them, the parliamentarian kind of works as just sort of advising the chair. Technically, the parliamentarian doesn't like do anything officially. Kind of same with the liaison. You're sort of like, it's information more than anything else. But I think, yeah, keeping them the same would make sense to me just as much as anything.
Member Gallant? Member Gallant?
Yeah. Does the parliamentarian make the decision? Like if there's a question of process and a question of rules, the parliamentarian would be the one that we would confer to?
That's who like reviews the rules, reviews Robert's rules or the charter or whatever,
Okay.
and then makes the
Good.
recommendation for how to proceed.
Good. I think that's going to be a good thing. I think we need that because, there's just a lot of rules and things. If we're following Robert's rules, things are tabled, things are, whatever. So I think it would be good. Thank you.
You can continue.
I just wanted to say real quick, it technically is advisory to the chair. That's how the language is, and that's how it is typically for a Robert's Rule kind of situation. But the parliamentarian tells everybody what they think, and then the chair can do that or not, and then the committee can vote to overrule if they disagree with the chair. But there can be kind of layers to it. But because of the way you asked it, I want to be clear. It's not like the parliamentarian says something and that's the law or something. Yeah.
Understood. It's just that we could look up, you would look up something like someone made a motion, and whether that was a quote unquote legal motion or not, that would be a good thing to look it up to see if in fact we could do that or somebody could do that. That's what I mean, that we could get some kind of reading on it.
Were you done? Yep. Member Heard?
Thank you. So yeah, I agree. I also think it gives the opportunity to kind of put a pause for like half a second. From what we saw a couple meetings ago, there were some high tension. Some people didn't want to give, some people didn't want to take, some people didn't want to listen to other people's opinions. So if we had that sort of position, it may give everybody a little, chance to take a step back and take a breath and regroup and see where we're at.
So I think I'm hearing to edit this to add votes on the parliamentarian and the legislative rep. Are there any other items people want added in the draft?
Member Heard?
Thank you. I actually had a question. I was looking over at the suggestions I had emailed you when I kind of gave my statement. And I should have emailed you this earlier, but I have things. But I had mentioned something about term limits for chair, and I don't know if that would be procedural rules or charter. And I think it just gives, like I said, I'm just going to reiterate what I said a couple meetings ago, that it just gives the opportunity for everybody that wants an opportunity to be chair, if that's what they want to do, if that's what they're looking to like further in their, I don't want to say your political career, but in your political career, I guess.
So I did do a little bit of research on that because I was curious myself. And what I found was that the sitting rules allow you to change chairs. So putting a term limit on a committee chair was not something I could find easily because of structures of making a change, whether it's annually or through your own rules. So I didn't add it to this version.
So and I know we can change chairs, but again, this committee is not supposed to be political, but we see that it is. And so I feel like unless we put a little bit of something in there, it allows for the same person to be voted in every single time, if that's what happens. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, unfortunately, it doesn't give another person an opportunity to be chair if they want to be chair, if the votes aren't there.
Does the committee want that added into this version that you would vote on? Do you want to vote on that being added or not added?
I would like to see term limits put in there for chair.
I would like to see term limits as well.
Counselor Harriman?
Just philosophically, personally, I feel like term limits aren't necessary when you have elections. Every election is an opportunity to choose somebody new. So if you are in a representative form where, every person gets one vote and they get to vote for someone, whoever wins the election wins the seat. So that's
And-
just my feeling on term limits, just broadly.
And we've seen the political, the way it swings side to side, that always shifts the power regardless, and it swings one way and then it swings the other and then it swings back. And so the politics of it always come out in the end in the wash, like it swings one way and then back the other. Member McLaughlin?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I don't know how much we need to talk about term limit philosophy, I guess. I mean, I like them for broad, elections, but for just who is the chair of this committee, it doesn't really make sense to me. I mean, it's just the 9 of us, and it's just the 9 of us voting on who we want the chair to be each year. It's not like a 6-year term or something like that. The chair has changed multiple times, just not since I've been on here, and we've had the same couple years in a row. But I mean, it doesn't. I think we should be able to work out, ideally who we want the chair to be. I mean, I think that just makes more sense to me than setting a specific limit. You don't know who might be in the best position to be chair in future years. It just makes sense to me to just figure it out each year as we go.
And just because I know that some of the comments are implying that I have been chair for an extended period of time, January 6th or whenever it was, I was my second term as chair being elected. Prior to that, I was chair for like a 9-month period when I picked up after Monique had resigned, and then I stepped down as chair and Bruce was chair for the 2 years in between. So I think some people think that I've just been chair for a really long period of time, but it hasn't actually been that way. There was a 2-year break in between when Bruce was also chair. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee before we go to public comment? Member Bowden?
I just, I've been on this committee for 4 years now, and every time the vote for chair comes around, it's always a 5-4 split, always. And so, for me to see a term limit on chair, like, you can serve 2 consecutive terms if you're reelected to the school committee, that's cool, but maybe it should be somebody else's turn to try chair. So that's just where my head is at. I just see it causes a divide, and it has every year I've been on this committee. So that's my reasoning behind it.
In January of 2022, when I was reelected as chair after Bruce had been chair, it was a 7-2 split. Bruce and Paul were the 2 that voted for Bruce and everyone else voted for me. So it hasn't always been a 5-4 split. That was a 7-2 split that time.
Yes, but we never actually voted on Bruce as chair either. So it was just
Because that was an
yeah, it was
inauguration year.
strange. Everything about it has just been strange the 4 years I've been on it, and so that's my point. I just think that just for the purpose of like better relations on this board, I think it would be a wise decision.
Are there any members of the public that would like to speak?
Good evening. Again, my name is Alan Sarvinas. I live in Topsom, state lead for Parents' Rights and Education Maine. I wanted to add to this discussion that it wasn't uncommon for school boards to rotate the chair and vice chair. So the chair would be in the position for 1 to 2 years. The vice chair would be in the position for 1 to 2 years, and it would cycle through the board directors on an ongoing basis, going from town to town. I'd also let the towns pick who they wanted to be chair. So I just wanted to add that to the discussion to show that it pretty much forces out or adds balance when everyone knows they're going to get a chance to lead. And it also adds to the integrity of the vice chair position and every other board director, because they get experience that only the chair and vice chair are able to get. Thank you.
Do I have to say who I am again? I agree with him, and I agree with Ward 6 and Ward 2. I was under a chair for 10 years. the same chair on the school board, and it got to the point that it was more of I was threatened if I didn't vote one way by this chair. I never told anybody this. I told a few people by this chair on something that I had to, anyway, it was, and it was the same chair for about 10 years when I was under. So I think we should have term limits or whatever you want to do and give everybody a chance. And I think Megan has been on it too long. Let her be a regular member. Thank you.
Matthew Legren, Ward 4. I'm a little concerned that your consent agenda doesn't allow members of the public to ask for things to be pulled off. It was obvious earlier tonight when I stood up to ask for things to be pulled off, and you guys went right through and disapproved it without even looking. The city council, which Scott can agree with here, public can ask for things to be pulled off the consent agenda so that we can question why it's there. Why can't we do it here?
Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak on this? Back to the school committee.
Just my 2 cents. I can see both sides of the thing. And I know I don't get a vote, but there are 4 members that were interested in that. So I think it may be worth putting to a vote. We may know the outcome, but just a thought to consider that. I mean, I think it's going to turn out to be 5-4. I'm not looking at a crystal ball, but I do think with 4 people saying out loud that they would like that to be considered. The offshoot to that, or the caveat to that, in my opinion, is we start facing that area of, are we following good process? Again, I think this is very predictable, but if 4 people of the group of 9, that's right, half, just pretty much, or almost. So to me, it's worth a conversation, or maybe even a vote.
Member Eames?
What number would you put on the term limits? Is it 1 term? Is it 3 terms? Is it, my vote would vary depending on like how short or long it is.
It's already written that the chair gets reelected every January, so it can't even be per term because a term is longer than how it's already written. It's already written, the chair is every January, there's the potential for a new chair. So a term
Correct.
is 2 years or 3 years. So it wouldn't even be written by term.
So whatever we call it, are we saying
time
that
frame you
there's,
just
right,
define the
is
time frame.
there a number of times someone could consecutively be chair in this proposition that we've got on the table?
Member Bowden?
Thank you. I'd like to suggest that that nobody serves more than 2 consecutive terms as chair on the school committee. And if you get reelected, to the school committee after 2 years, that's great. But at that point, I don't think you should be chair. I think that someone else, maybe someone new that's been elected to the board, would like the opportunity. So, I mean, I don't know how everyone feels about that, but I think 2 consecutive terms is fair.
The language has to be careful with language because 2 consecutive terms, some people serve 2-year terms, some people serve 3-year terms. So it has to be in years, not
So
terms.
2 consecutive years.
Member McLaughlin, did you have a? Oh, Member Osmond?
Yeah, I would just say I would vote for the time limit if it's gonna be 2 consecutive terms, and I would be okay with voting for the time.
2 other caveats. One is, and I'm just thinking these now live, but you can change the procedural rules at any point in time. So you could go through this whole process right now and then ultimately decide to change it. But I'd also be curious, thinking about a rules of order perspective of what if no one else wants to be the chair? And then we have a situation, I guess you could change maybe the procedural rules, or could there be a mechanism for overriding that if it was the will of the committee, whether it's a supermajority or something? I don't know. I guess I'm curious if if we have no nominees, that's hard to do the work.
Our procedural rules can be changed at any time. We could change them tonight, then we could change them at our next meeting, and then we could change them again at the next meeting. Like it's written that our procedural rules can be revised at any time. So it's already very fluid. Member Bowden?
Okay, so to be fair, have you ever run into a situation where nobody wanted to be chair of the school committee? Can you think of a time when no one wanted to be chair?
It's still possible.
I can think of a time
The
when,
first time Megan was when Monique stepped away. I think she didn't want to do it.
No
but
one wanted to
No
do
one
it.
wanted to do it, but that was a different scenario for sure.
okay. So I suppose in that scenario, I mean, I don't know. I suppose you just go with the majority. I don't know.
Having sat through a committee that made multiple revisions to the procedural rules for the sake of the agenda of that committee or those individuals, it's not sustainable policy. It's not like our procedural rules are supposed to be what guides us and in theory would continue to be what guides us even when there's new committee members. And I don't really care one way or another, but having been through a committee before that made multiple changes to the procedural rules to benefit themselves, I think that that's a waste of a lot of time, and that's. Member Heard?
Thank you. So I have to say, I have zero agenda at all in bringing this up. I'm offering a fair and equitable process to allow other members to potentially experience being a chair if they so wish. And so I think if Lewiston's vision is to be fair and equitable, we need to also offer that on our board as well. And I think there are zero agendas here. I'm just looking to offer other people an opportunity if that's what they want to do.
You either put it to a vote or I can put it in and you can vote on that piece in the future.
So I'll make the motion to put into the procedural rules a term limit of 2 consecutive years as chair. If nobody, I don't know what to say about nobody wanting
You
it.
need to say that.
Yeah,
though.
that's probably right.
Because if there was nobody interested,
Yeah,
that committee
then
could just
that-
change the procedural
Right,
rules.
right. So let's.
It's really kind of silly.
I'm gonna
All it's silly.
propose that we vote on this motion.
Would you like to restate the motion? Sorry. Without the extra part you were going to add and then you took off.
I didn't add anything.
Okay.
I said, okay. So I will say that we propose a motion that we put into the procedural rules a line that says no one should serve normally, comma, no one will serve as chair more than 2 years in a row.
Okay.
2 consecutive years. And then let's vote on that.
Is there a second? Seconded by Member Bowden. Any further discussion? All in favor? And opposed? 5-4. Passes 5-4. So you're going to work on the language and bring it back to us?
Mm-hmm.
You read the procedure, what it is, because again, we don't have any papers that say went on.
It's in the packet. It's the whole it's all of our procedural, the packet that's online with the, it's a lot to read. We can't just read the whole procedural rules right now.
This is not transparent.
Agenda item number 9, to receive an update on the housing grant. Do you have the whole thing printed out, Elizabeth? Procedural rules?
Yeah.
Pass it down.
So the grant award was announced, I don't know, a week or 2 ago, and we had shared it, but thought it'd be a good idea to share it publicly that Lewiston Public Schools was awarded $169,883 to participate in Maine Housing's 2024 Student Homelessness Prevention Pilot. And this is a structure in which we have an agreement with Lewiston Housing to facilitate the navigation of securing housing and resources. This was a grant that was guided by the state. They had the funds. We asked what language would be appropriate if we were interested in getting more resources connected to our Student Resource Center. And this grant was awarded to us. It will help us work with a partner to essentially somebody else will hire a staff to help facilitate this work. And we'll be the fiscal agent to try to help folks find residents.
Member Gallant?
Couple questions. The grant, will the hiring of the person that's going to be running the program, is that taken out of the grant?
Yes, the grant pays for that staff.
And do we know how much that will be?
I had it at one point in front of me. I don't have it in front of me right now. It was written into the grant based on the state's recommendation, and that's what was approved. I can
Okay.
get you the number.
Another question, which I don't understand. If it's going to be for homeless students who are minors, how does that work? I mean, are they going to work with a family? Are they going to work with an individual homeless student? And if they are, they're minors. So how does that work? I don't understand a lot of the process here.
Yeah, so I don't think it's just for kids. I think it's to help families in general. But the kids are impacted by the homelessness, so you try to work with all those populations. And the employee is not Lewiston Public Schools employee. The employee is Maine Housing employee. Community Concepts. And so it navigates through a separate entity. It's not our salary, if you will. The grant pays them the salary for the person.
Follow-up question. Were we the only recipients of a grant?
No, there were a number of recipients and some got much more than we did, which is what prompted some of the questions.
Yeah.
And so when we followed up, the grant process was unique in that the funds existed. There was an invitation to apply, but there was no clear criteria. And so we asked what could we apply for? How would this make as much sense to us as possible? And what we submitted is what they recommended we submit. And we received everything we submitted for, but there were some other districts that got more funds.
Okay. So the city of Lewiston will be, is the program manager.
Lewiston Public Schools is the fiscal agent.
We get the money.
Yeah.
We get the grant. Is this a renewable grant or is this a one-year grant? Do we know?
One time, to my knowledge. If they do renew it, we'd have to reapply, I'm sure.
Okay. And can we ask for more?
So at this point, it's closed and they've dispersed the funds available.
Okay. For next year, we could.
I don't even know if this
It's going
grant
to
will be
go on.
available in
Okay.
the future.
Okay. Could we get some updates about that grant? You know, maybe, if it starts, when is it supposed to start? Do we know? Immediately? Yeah.
Yeah,
I would
there's
like
already
to
been
get,
conversations about who the staff might
yeah,
be.
I would like to get some updates to see how it's being used and to see if we have any successful placements.
Yeah,
or
we can do
whatever.
that for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Did you have any more? Are you good with that? All right. Agenda item number 10, to review current law and policies for student behavior.
So we have talked a lot about student behavior and expectations, and we've also shared some limitations, but we haven't put it on the agenda. It's come up in conversation. So I don't know that we will come to a grand conclusion tonight, but at least wanted to put information in front of you and have a conversation about what exists and share some information. So I'll pull off of that memo that was shared. That there are varying levels of student behavior that cause disruptions in our schools. We cannot suspend or expel our way to better behavior. However, suspensions and expulsions are steps we have, that we have used to address student behaviors. As a district, we have remained committed to providing services to students who are expelled in the hopes that new skills are developed, a sense of purpose, and the value of school is internalized. And other corrective steps are taken before a student has the opportunity to request re-entry from the school committee, as you all know. And just some additional information, because I think there's some thoughts out there that LPS just allows everything, and I think we have ways to improve, but LPS has had scheduled 25 student disciplinary hearings in the current school year, so just since August. 16 students have been expelled in those processes or those hearings. Truancy continues to be a concern, which we have discussed. And then there's some other caveats that people should be aware of, that students 5th grade or lower cannot be expelled unless they violate a firearm statute. Suspension rules have changed that limit the reason for and the number of days a student can be out of school. That includes language around physical injury, which is being defined in law, and a cap of 3 days out of school if that exists. The laws and statutes in IDEA, ADA, MUSER, which is our special ed law in Maine, and others have stay conditions if behaviors are due to a diagnosis. So that's what prompts us to have meetings that are called manifestations, where we look at the diagnosis and we have to make a determination if the behavior was a manifestation of a disability. It really further limits the interactions we can have as it relates to consequences. We do need to continue to work to educate families, students, also ourselves, to try to figure out more details of what's going on. We continue to work with city staff and city officials around safety conversations. We have a couple more coming up. We met with students. We're meeting with community organizations, and we'll be doing some parent sessions, town hall style, where we share things to look for, strategies, techniques in and around what might lead to, especially some of our older students or young adults, in and around drugs, alcohol, guns, violence, those sorts of things, and continue to work on that. We do have included here just current policy, but I wanted to allude to the laws and regulations in the statute to make sure people are aware that we have some constraints on some things that we can do. But there have been some pretty significant consequences that you all are aware of. Obviously, is a bit of complexity in what we can share publicly about individualized situations, but we take all student situations very seriously, as you know, and we work every day to try to be the best we can with it. There are some pushes at the legislative level to shift, especially the 5 and below language, and we're hopeful that that gets some traction, because right now schools with a repeatedly disruptive student, with every intervention you can imagine, have very limited tools on what you can do other than move around a classroom and try to put that student back in a class, in whatever method you can. So it becomes really, really challenging.
One of the things you said was that suspension rules have changed. That's at a state level. That's not a local level, right? I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Member Bowden?
Thank you. So I have some thoughts, and I also think it's an appropriate time for me to read the letter that my daughter wrote to the school committee regarding her experience at the high school. But I want to start by saying that I am having some issue with hearing about language being used at the high school, middle school level, and how it just seems to be not disregarded, but more or less disregarded as just, oh, kids are going to say what they're going to say. We can't discipline every single kid every time they swear. But it just seems to be like such like a baseline level of respect that we should be upholding. I did text this to you earlier. I graduated in 2001, and I do not remember ever hearing a student swear at a teacher or swear in the middle of class. Like, that was just completely unacceptable. And it seems to be the norm now that kids just talk this way at school. My own kids don't even swear in front of me, and they're 19 and 16. They don't swear in front of me. So it's just mind blowing to me that we've just created this culture where it's okay. It's okay to just be disrespectful with our words constantly. And I've even heard it in elementary level. Like, it's crazy. So I do think that we need to hold a line there. But I'm also going to read this letter from my daughter, who is she says it right here. My name is Brooklyn, and I'm a sophomore at Lewiston High School. I'm also the daughter of school committee member Janet. I want to share my experiences with Lewiston Public Schools over the past few years. Given my connection with the school system through my mother's involvement, I feel it's important to express my perspective. I'm not afraid to admit that our schools are far from perfect, but the situation has reached a point that feels abnormal. I've been a part of Lewiston Public Schools since kindergarten. I was fortunate to spend my early years at McMahon with close friends and positive relationships with my teachers. However, once students transition to the middle school, it can significantly change their perspective on education. Everyone experiences something during middle school that can negatively impact their view of school, whether it involves a teacher or a peer. And unfortunately for me, I face challenges from both my classmates and my teachers. One crucial lesson that students aren't often warned about is that any difficulties encountered in middle school tend to follow you into high school. My freshman year of high school really left me dreading the idea of returning to school this year. Not only did my peers ruin my experience, but the way my teachers approached schoolwork contributed to it as well. In some classes, we would be informed that assignments had been posted on Google Classroom, and it kind of felt like a free-for-all from there. I had a teacher who handed out physical pieces of paper for an assignment and would lose it every single time. Unfortunately, due to the way grades are set up with standards, that one piece of paper ended up causing my overall grade to drop significantly when it was lost. This frustration made me reluctant to complete the work for that teacher. I was pulled to the office to talk with principals, assistant principals, and other teachers about the issues I was facing with some of my classes. While some problems were resolved, there were occasions that they couldn't help. I was never afraid to speak up on issues when they arose in class. This school year, I have been yelled at and humiliated in front of my classmates by a teacher. I had schoolwork stolen without any resolve, and I was falsely accused of skipping class. About a month ago, a fight broke out just inches away from me while I was walking to lunch, and it didn't even faze me. The only thing that annoyed me was that I had to walk around the whole situation to get to the cafeteria. It's just immature and childish to be in an environment like this constantly. The fight shouldn't feel normal in a place where I spend 5 days of my week. I can't even walk the hall during class periods to go to the bathroom without being questioned about skipping class. When I enter the bathroom, it often smells of whatever the previous student was smoking. Almost immediately after I get in, somebody starts pounding on the door because the next kid needs to lock themselves in there. I have recently stopped using the bathroom at school, and I plan not to use it again. The environment at the school is quite disheartening at this point. The building has become filled with disrespect and immaturity. Because of the actions of others, no one is taken seriously, and it no longer feels like a cohesive school community. Instead, it feels like a waste of my time. I know I'm not the only one who feels this way, and I also understand that speaking up won't likely lead to any changes. This is simply the environment that has been fostered at our school. There are no guarantees, and it seems unlikely that Lewiston High School will ever truly feel like a safe place to be every day. About 2 months ago, my mom had a meeting with several staff members. We were ready to pull me out of school. I honestly thought that it would be my last time stepping foot in that building. However, we realized that homeschooling wouldn't provide me with the same opportunities for the future as staying in this school would. It still doesn't make much sense to me. As a student who attends class, completes assignments, and shows respect to teachers, I don't think it's fair that I will walk across the graduation stage alongside students who have never shown up or given any respect to those around them. They don't want me to leave Lewiston High School, and they offered me various options to encourage me to stay. However, I wonder why I wasn't presented with these options during the countless times I visited the office on my own, expressing my own frustration and readiness to give up. As harsh as it sounds, the situation highlights the lack of support within our school. It seems that the school caters more to students who don't care about their future after high school rather than those who are generally concerned about it. I have decided to graduate high school a year early, and I'm putting in the extra work to achieve this goal. I'm truly grateful for the resources and support I have, but I recognize that not all students are in the same position. Every teacher I have informed about my early graduation has responded with a similar sentiment. You have your whole life ahead of you to be an adult. Why rush into it? All this time, I haven't really had a response, but now I can say that I'm making this choice because I no longer want to be a part of the high school environment. I feel I am more advanced in my thinking and my maturity compared to how I am treated and spoken to by others. If the high school has taught me one important lesson this year, it's that I'm ready to start a new chapter in my life and move on. I don't want to be held back any longer than necessary. If I had felt
truly heard when I sought help and received an effective solution to my problems, I probably would have stayed for the full 4 years. But as it stands, the school no longer feels like a supportive environment. It feels like a waste of time. I know there are other students who share my feelings and who also need the support from the school that they haven't received. I'm disappointed to see the place where I grew up turn into an unsafe environment that seems indifferent to students' needs. I do have a lot of respect for the teachers and the challenges that they face every day, but the childish and immature behavior that some students often distract attention away from those of us who genuinely care about our education. So I apologize if that was, I don't know. But that's the sentiments of my daughter who is at the school every single day. And it's a far cry from the senior reflection that I read of my other daughter last year. It's very different. She's living a very different life at Lewiston High School, and it's concerning. So we do need to hold the line with behaviors.
Member Hurd?
Thank you. So a few things. I do have to agree with Member Bowden on the swearing. I feel like I am in a unique situation. I have children at the elementary school, so I have a different perspective out of some of you because I do have children in our schools. And I agree, not only is this happening at the middle school and high school, it's happening at the elementary school. And at an elementary age level, children's brains aren't fully functioning. And my son comes home and says, well, so-and-so swears at the teacher and it's in a different language and the teacher doesn't do anything. Mom, if I were to swear at a teacher, I would have to go to the office, or I would have to do this, or I would have to do that. Mom, why are they allowed to behave this way and I'm not allowed to behave this way? There is zero consistency across the board on what's okay for one and not okay for another. And we love McMahon, and I love the admin at McMahon, and the teachers are great. But I think across the board as a district, what's good for some is not okay for others. And I think that is a concern. I did speak to Superintendent Langlis last week. I have been on this board for 3 years, and in the last month and a half, I have gotten more phone calls, text messages, emails. People are stopping me in the grocery store. I'm at the drive-thru at Starbucks, and people are like, "Are you Megan Hurd on the school committee? Can you pull around so I can chat with you for 5 minutes?" Like, people are coming out of the woodwork, and they are frustrated. And I said this to Jake on the phone. It's nothing personal against you and Karen and the admin, but if I feel frustrated as a school committee member because I feel like my voice is not being heard, I cannot imagine what the teachers and staff and parents in this district are feeling, because if I'm frustrated, they are 10 times frustrated more than I am. And I don't understand. I don't understand how I have families that are coming to me and saying, my children don't feel safe at school, and I'm going to have to make the decision to either pay for them to go to private school or pay for them to do extracurricular activities, and I can't do both. A parent shouldn't have to decide if their child is safe at school or if they can do ballet or play soccer or play baseball or do hockey or do basketball. Parents shouldn't have to be making these decisions about the safety of their children, and they don't feel safe. And I don't know how else to say it other than I'm looking at the student code of conduct and it says respect, honesty, compassion, fairness, responsibility, courage. If you were to walk through that building, are these students actually abiding to this code of conduct, and are they being held accountable for it? And why aren't we holding them accountable for it? Just another side note, a member of the public in their public comment stated something about restorative justice work. I would like to know, I mean, you did give us statistics on the homelessness that members had requested. I would like to know when we started doing restorative justice in our schools and what the trends have looked like since then. Are we seeing more expulsions? Are we seeing more behaviors? Are we seeing less behaviors? Are we seeing less expulsions? What are we seeing if we're doing this work? If the work is doing what it's supposed to be doing, is it actually doing that? Or could we be directing those resources somewhere else that would make a bigger difference? And I don't know. I'm just asking for data to show me, is this working? Is it doing what it's supposed to be doing?
Any other questions? Counselor Harriman?
Thank you. And I want to thank Member Bowden for reading that letter. I agree with the, holding people accountable to the student code of conduct. I did also want to mention, so I was going to ask about if anything could be changed about the 5th grade and lower. There, you can't expel. I don't know what the rules are about suspension. And Jake, you said that there is a bill in the legislature to possibly address that.
I don't know of a bill number, but I do know that all of our delegation have heard it and have said that they would carry those sentiments forward. And the restrictions around 5th grade and lower is up to 3 days suspension. And that is only if there's definitions around imminent harm or actual harm. And we are held to that standard as far as kids being out of school.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that could be helpful. And I also wanted to mention that I believe there's also a bill in about the amount of information that the police can share with the school, which could also be helpful to us.
Yeah, we've collaborated with a number of people on that language. We're pursuing a few things. One of them is information sharing if it involves a weapon or a gun of some sort. We've also looked for and pushed forward, I don't know what we'll grab a bill number, but language around, it's actually fairly prescribed what an SRO can be. And with shortage of law enforcement and shortage of funds at times, we're looking for ways to kind of mimic like a court-like structure, which allows for retired service members, retired police officers to maintain certain certifications, but function in different capacities. And right now you cannot do that. SROs must be part of your local law enforcement agency.
Okay, thank you.
Member Gallant?
I'm kind of frustrated. I know we had some public members come up and speak about, it almost sounded like the pepper spray that was done in the middle school was almost, it sounded like it was almost warranted. And I think, and that is really disturbing to me. If we have the thinking that anybody can go around hurting somebody else because they feel that they're not being treated fairly, I mean, that's just ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. And that's disturbing. I hope that there's some common sense when we're dealing with pepper spray. Things like that, to me, are like having a gun. I mean, it's not deadly, but it is an assault. It is, as assaultive as you can be with something. Very disturbing, very disturbing. And my take on it is that parents are not parenting. And there's nothing that the school board or the school committee or the teachers can make up for that lack. It's a culture. Our culture has changed. I had 3 boys, 3 sons in school during the high school, middle school during the 90s. They graduated by, I think, 2005. I think they all graduated. And there was never this happening during this time frame. We have to figure out what's changed in the last 20 years. What has changed? And we have to look at other school systems. I would like to do some work on looking at like Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul. I know they had some issues that had come along with migrants and immigrants. I know this is going to be misconstrued as racist and whatever you want to call it, but it's not. If you want to look at the most common denominator of what's going on in the last 20 years, we have to look at something. And what's changed? That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Member McLaughlin?
So I was going to call back to something in Member Bowden's daughter's letter about, there's something about how she got the sense that the school seems like they care potentially more about the students who don't care about school or aren't like, or whatever it is, as opposed to someone in her position. And I actually found that rung true for me as a school committee member. And there's just, that's to a certain extent, kind of just the facts of the way state law and other things prescribe our involvement. But, you know, we spend a lot of time, and I know the superintendent spends even more time focusing on the students that are potentially up for expulsion or being expelled ultimately. And the, we're not graduating one way or the other. So there's, we spend so much time there, which at the end of the day is, you know, less than 1% of the school population. And it's very hard, I find, even after being here for, you know, a little over a year, to really get a sense of what can we do for everyone else, you know, in terms of these behaviors, including things that probably none of us think you should be expelled for, you know, swearing at a teacher, but certainly, you know, we would probably agree to a certain extent there needs to be some way of kind of addressing respect in the school system and looking at, you know, the policies that we have around discipline. So much of it necessarily does rely on the building, you know, administration and the staff to set the policies for their the policies and their, you know, guidance for their own building, and then obviously to carry that out. And I find I have a hard time thinking about what can we actually do. I mean, do they need some kind of district-wide approach to some of these behaviors that would that make their job easier? Would it make it worse? You know, would it result in them having to spend a lot of time on smaller things? I find that is a little challenging. I know that is why, and I suppose if there's any point to this, it would just be that group, subcommittee to look at, you know, behavioral issues and disciplinary approach. I think that, you know, I think we identified the 4 members who are interested, and I hope Jake won't mind me saying that. I think you can kind of, you know, start to organize yourselves maybe. It's easy for me to say because I didn't volunteer for it, but, you know, I think that's just, it seems only more and more necessary. And I'm glad that we kind of identified that as an avenue, because it seems like we could spend a lot of time as a full, you know, 9-person committee just trying to pick apart, like, okay, what needs to be our policy around XYZ behaviors, and working with the administration, working with the teachers, hearing what they need. Because I do think this broader question, which comes up in all kinds of things from behavior to just regular academics, it's like, you know, how can the school system even be expected to make up for a lack of discipline and reading and stuff at home? But that's kind of, at the end of the day, we get what we're given, right? And we have to, where else will students in that position learn these things other than at the public school system? And really, that's kind of the whole point, I think. And we have to kind of figure out, you know, if this is a situation we have where we are having more behaviors that are not beneficial, I'd say, to a learning environment, then somehow we have to figure out what to do about it. And that's just my feeling generally. You know, I'm hopeful that we'll have a way to kind of collaboratively work as a committee with the administrators and so on to figure out what can actually help. But it does feel challenging from this position to identify what that could be.
I think it's interesting, like if we look back over the progression of time, there was like a 2-year period where the committee didn't do, I don't think, one single discipline hearing, expulsion hearing. And I don't remember hearing about as much like fighting and violence in our schools. And I wonder, was that just because the schools were handling it in their own way individually and not bringing it to the school committee? Or like what was different in that time frame? Because we literally went a very, very long time without those. So what was different then? And I think, I just want to say, I think our teachers at all of our grade levels are doing very, very difficult work trying to manage these behaviors. I think that part of the problem is we don't do enough and I'm trying to say this cautiously because I think everybody's doing a lot more than they need to, but we don't do enough to address some of the behaviors at the lower grade levels. And so by the time they're in middle school and high school, those are learned behaviors. And they're not just learned behaviors in the school. These kids are exposed to social media as young as like 1 and 2 years old. And it's just normalized to hear the swearing and the language and the violence and kicking people in the head. And all of that stuff is so normalized in society now that we have to address that right away, pre-K, kindergarten, first, second, get those behaviors established very, very clearly at those age levels, or else you're not going to change that at the middle school and high school level. But at that point, those behaviors are pretty set and it's going to be hard to change until they finish their frontal lobe development and then they start becoming adults. And so I think we need to find a way to do more with early interventions instead of spending so much time on the other end trying to correct behaviors that they've been doing for 8, 9, 10 years. Did you want to speak to the history? Okay, member Hurd.
Thank you. So Jake and I also had a long conversation about this because, again, I have elementary age students and I feel for what Janet's daughter is saying because, and I hate using the word quote unquote normal, but our quote unquote normal kids are just getting sloughed to the side because they don't have extreme behaviors and they're not disrupting classes and they don't have this kind of thing. And what's happening at the elementary age levels, and I'm all about teaching kids how to work towards a goal. So if you have a student who's being disruptive or has a behavior, like you want them to be able to work, to be able to not act that way. So I understand there's some sort of like incentive that you want to give them, but our students are taught at a young age, you act a specific way, we're going to take you for a walk and then you're going to get a lolly or you're going to get a sticker, you're going to get this, or you have kids who are so disruptive in class that they are clearing classrooms or they're throwing chairs or tables or hurting other students. And if they don't do that the next day, then they get this special treat. But then you have these other kids who are perfect every single stinking day and they get nothing. So we're not teaching our kids how to behave better. They're not dogs. You're not going to give them a treat when they sit. Like that's not how that works. And that's the best way that I can compare those two things. But it's happening and again, like you said, Member Parks, our elementary teachers are phenomenal, but they're in survival mode. They are doing whatever they can do to survive the day. Like they can't tackle these big behaviors and this is what's happening. And we're just pushing them along and pushing them along and pushing them along and we're not holding them to a standard. And we have to draw the line somewhere because our normal, quote unquote, normal kids are also suffering. They're also suffering trauma because of the things that are happening in our classrooms. We can't continue to let that happen every single day.
Yes, all of this is so true and so frustrating and so difficult. I have many thoughts in my head. Starting young, absolutely. Bringing in Dr. Saida Abdi again, over and over, listening to her. Paying her what she's due and listening to her and implementing what she says. The idea that the teachers are yelling at your child. I mean, that's really disturbing. So we want the teachers to hold the line. We don't want them to move down to the level of disrespect that it sounds like that was. So it's very, very challenging, but we do have to shift the culture. But I'm going to say it again, it's all over the country. It's not just here. It's all over Maine. It's not just here. So again, it's a generational thing that social media and COVID both affect, and parents, and we've got to figure it out because we can't go on like this. Well, I'm on the, chair of the policy committee. We write the policies, but they have to be implemented. The fact that we write great policies, yes, it's part of our job, but we have to implement them. Everybody has to together figure out how to draw the line and implement them. And I know it's incredibly hard, but we have to support the efforts in this direction.
And just a point that may not be well received by some people, but I'm going to say it because there's lots of research to back it up. Discipline doesn't have to be punitive. I think that some people have this idea that unless we're being like firm and mean and disciplined and like, that's not necessarily what discipline is. Discipline is about teaching a lesson and teaching kids to act a different way or teaching whoever to act a different way. But discipline doesn't have to be punitive. That's where I think things get lost. Member Eames?
It's structure. It's having structure that they hit up against, and the structure matters. And if you hit up against the structure, you have a consequence of some sort, not necessarily punitive, but a consequence. And then that trains people, but it's that structure that's so crucial.
Member, Counselor Harriman?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I agree that we definitely need to improve things. I won't pretend to have the answers, but I did want to push back respectfully on something that was mentioned before. I don't think we can just blame this on immigrants. This is really, as someone mentioned, it's a nationwide issue. I've noticed it's probably been the past 6 to 8 years or so, there's been really a shift in just everyone's attitude, it seems. And I thought it was interesting that Member Bowden mentioned in her daughter's letter, she mentions people acting immature, and she seems to be at a level that's that's different from others. And I've noticed that as well, like just the immaturity from adults, from people older than me even, in the last several years has been it's just really crept up there. I mean, I had neighbors across the street. Thankfully, they've moved since then, but out of 3 adults and 4 kids, the girl who was in middle school was the most mature out of all of them, far more mature than her parents and her aunt. So there's definitely a societal issue there with maturity and I would say basic respect. And again, I don't know what the answers are, unfortunately.
Member Gallant?
We're talking about structure, we're talking about discipline, different types of discipline. I think there's a lack of that in the home. I know kids come to school to be fed, both physically and emotionally. So sometimes we have to start from that. Someone mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There's probably a lot of kids out there that just are not in a safe spaces. What I also wanted to talk about, as I did a little bit of research, St. Paul in Minneapolis, Minnesota, has the highest immigrant population of cities in the United States, and they are ahead of Lewiston. So I think it would be, and I've tried to get some information on about the culture of immigrants, the culture of kids, parents, things like that, so that I could understand it better. But there are problems. And I think we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think we could get, like what Member Eames said, we could get Said back in and maybe have like a conference, maybe more than 1 hour or 2 hours. Maybe we could do like some kind of weekend or whatever, get some experts in here so that maybe we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I'm not just talking about immigrants. I'm talking about culture of the culture that we are in now, that opposed to when I was raising children. That we don't have friends. We have, and we have social media and what that's doing to not only our ability to socialize within groups, but also our brain matter, because we know it affects both. So I wanted to discuss that, and I think I will try to get some more information about the St. Paul and Minneapolis immigrant culture and how they grew and because they had problems and as well. So I think it would be good to get more information.
Member Bowden?
Thank you. I actually agree with Member Parks that we need to start at the bottom and start at the younger ages and create a different culture and a different standard that we're holding our kids to. I think that's very important. But I also want to I want to give a shout out to Mr. Fuller at the high school, and I think he's a great example of somebody not only that my daughter has told me holds the same standards for everybody. I've seen it myself as far as holding every single kid in that school to the exact same standard with how they speak to him and how they behave. And I've seen it firsthand, and I think he could teach. I think he could be a great example for everybody in the school on how to handle these sorts of situations. So shout out to Mr. Fuller for that. And that's where I wanted to end what I have to say.
Member Eames?
Also, when we went to Montello that day, everyone was on great behavior, so I know they can do it. That's the thing. You know it's possible. Thank you.
Member Hurd?
Thank you. So I don't know if a lot of the public know this, but we do obviously, but we have a program called Root Ed that some of our students who are expelled or it's an, what do you call it, an alternative program? I don't know what the technical word is for it, but anyways, it's a separate program that some of our students go to continue their education. But we see when those students come back for reentry hearings, they are completely different students. They have respect. They understand what it's meant to be part of a community. And so I wish we could clone and have 50 more Keenans, but unfortunately that's not possible. But I think what he's doing over there with those students, like they have to do some sort of community service over there. They have a sense of belonging to that program, into that building. You know, they have to mop floors or sweep or build things or take care of the littles. Like that is what our students need, a sense of community, a sense of belonging. Like they walk into that building and those teachers, and there's zero respect for them. They don't, there's none. But if they were taught to be respectful and responsible, and that was they took pride in that building, you may get a completely different student out of them. So we know that structure and that program works. So how do we start implementing some of those things that they're doing over there into our regular buildings? And I don't even know if that's possible, but I think we've seen enough of what that type of environment can do for students. So how do we do that every day?
Did you have anything to add?
So I just wanted, yeah, taking it all in. And I hope I know everybody here knows, but I hope also folks watching or in the audience knows that we're not settled about this. We're not okay with where we're at. And that it needs to get better. I do want to thank Janet. I think it's very courageous of you to share that letter, but also to Brooklyn for writing it and saying, go ahead, put my name out there. It's very authentic and I appreciate that. I happen to know some of the situations that we can't say here. Very authentic. I really appreciate it. I think these ideas are all good. I think we have to do some things. We have some ideas. We're trying to see if they fit within the confines of the current law. That would allow us to hold structures a little better, but also hold some accountability differently than what we're currently doing. I think I'll be able to bring that to you in a few weeks. I want to see some of the legislation, at least the leads on it, and also making sure that whatever I put in front of you is not going to land us in a bunch of lawsuits. But we do have some ideas. It has to get better. I think our administrators are saying it. They don't know what to do in some of these situations when their hands are absolutely tied. We have teachers that are working their tails off, but they are tired. And some of the things that they are chasing, they should not have to chase. The labor market's been a challenge, but I think we're getting better. I think our model is helping people grow. But again, we have to continue to improve. So, we wouldn't put this on the agenda. We knew this isn't new. And some steps have to happen. And we might have to walk right up to a line that someone might interpret differently, but something's got to give. We got to get better.
I would really like to see us front load as much of our budget as we can to meet the needs of the whole district, but to really focus on the elementary level. I think that we need more of the social emotional piece, like what they do at Rooted, to get the kids doing like community service in their schools and to have the staff to be able to do that. When we have teachers that have 24, 25, 26 kids in their class, we can't, and maybe one ed tech if they're lucky, we can't expect them to sit down and do that one-on-one work that kids are getting in the Rooted program. So we need to just get as much like way more heavy at the elementary level so we can really focus on those needs before they become as big as they are at the middle school and high school level. And like just push it all that way as much as we can.
Whatever we do, it has to land in skill development. I think that's when we say what's different. So from a historical perspective, the phones, the social media, it's huge. It really is. It challenges a kid's sense of adequacy. It builds fear in kids. It makes them want to compete with each other. They can't look bad. They can't look weak. And it's nonstop. You know, when we were kids, you had to hang the phone up on the wall and you went to bed, you know, and it doesn't happen in a lot of our houses, but there are lots of houses where the kids have the phone all night and they're on it and they're checking it and they're addicted to it, right? And so I think that that's a big piece of it, but it's what's not being addressed through other avenues. We've even looked at youth programs where we have more availability and kids don't want to do it. They don't actually want to go play that new sport or go to the gym and do the thing that we thought they might. And some of the other activities we provided for enrichment through 21st Century, and kids are like, I'd rather look at my phone. And it's really problematic. I think as a society, we have to create a shift where phones get put away. But I also think that we have to get kids to re-engage. I forget who the speaker was earlier. I thought she did a really good job crafting her public comment about kids will thrive with this engagement and this interpersonal piece. And I think so many people have forgotten how to be responsible to each other interpersonally, to think about and be considerate of others and what you're doing and how that impacts others. And we're going to have to build it back because it's just not present.
Member Eames?
Her name was Kaylee Pulsifer, in case you wondered. I am the legislative liaison, and I do have the printout of all the different bills that are up in front, and many of them have to do with this issue. It's not just Lewiston. The whole state is trying to deal with similar issues. So I don't want to read you out the numbers and the names, but basically there's like half a dozen, maybe more, of these proposals that are being addressed in Augusta, which would, if they pass, go into effect next year. But there is a sense out there that we all need more support, and to change some of those laws, like the one about fifth grade, like the one about restraint and seclusion, like some of these other ones. Yeah.
I also think if we added back recess at the middle school, that would help a lot too, but that's a whole other argument. We'll go to the members of the public. If any members of the public would like to speak on this subject.
I don't talk loud enough. I thought I talked loud enough. Janet, what your daughter has written is true. I have seen all that at the school. I've seen them do it to the teachers. It's been done to me. You know where I teach? I love LRTC. If you haven't been in LRTC during the day, you should go to LRTC because it's a lot quieter. There's no rushing in the hallways. There's no swearing. And the kids, I did do some teaching in the classroom. I don't now because of what happened. And it was Lewiston students that gave me a hard time in the school. And thank God for Jason Fuller at that time because the principal was not around. Jay Dufour and Jason Fuller. And you're right about Jason Fuller, Janet. Very, very right. He sticks to the way he was brought up in the school in the 90s. And that's the way it used to be. That my son, when he had teachers at high school, the 6 weeks after I saw freshman teachers in the high school, they had figured out my son. Now, my son was bright, so his algebra teacher gave him harder things to work on than regular algebra. He already knew it. So he was bored with what was going on in algebra. Now, 6 weeks after all the teachers in the high school could tell me about his personality. In fact, I was allowed as a parent to change a couple teachers because I knew it would not go along with his personality. Okay? And you're right, we need to get those studies about what's going on, what's happened in other states. And I have to agree with Ward 6 too, and everything. And thank you for your daughter doing that, because everything she said is true. And I've been called names and everything else, and they're by the Lewiston High School students and not the other around the city. Even the EL kids are better off when I've taught in the LRTC. I've had to call administration one time, and that's why I quit the classroom. I only do clinical because of the way the kids were acting. And it was the Lewiston High School kids. So that tells you something. LRTC is good because they teach to what the kid wants. And maybe we need to go back to that. They teach the individual kid and everything, and not just the IEP ones. Thank you. And that's what a good teacher does.
Hi, my name is Stevie Dunton. I live in Ward 6. I've been a teacher for 13 years, and for the past 2, I've been teaching some of your kids at Franklin. I would just like to say I wanted to come up here and talk about cell phones, but it seems like you guys are all on the same page about that and just need to have the bravery to do something. I do want to make a comment though about the person who said, oh, I'd like to see some data on how restorative justice has been going in the schools. I would like to challenge you to think that if students are cussing at teachers and don't have consequences, you're not doing restorative justice. If some student can go home to their parent and say, oh, these kids are just allowed to cuss in school and nothing happens to them, but if I cuss, I get sent to the principal's office. Neither of those two things are restorative justice. Restorative justice is about building community. If a kid is on their cell phone all class period, you're not doing restorative justice. Restorative justice is about building a community, having students participating in the community, taking responsibility for the way that they're breaking down the community with their behaviors. And if that's what's happening in schools, if students aren't even getting basic consequences for things like cussing, you're not doing restorative justice. And I would like to say that if you gather data about how good restorative justice is working in the schools, it's going to show that it's not working, because all you've done is say, I'm just not going to suspend people at all. That's restorative justice, and it's not. I feel uniquely qualified to comment on this because Franklin does do restorative justice. Students will beg us to just suspend them so they don't have to sit down and do restorative justice. Restorative justice is hard work. Students will know if you're doing restorative justice. And if they don't know that it's happening, you're not doing restorative justice.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak?
Hi, Kaylee Pulsifer. I have been, or I was I was a teacher in Maine for 8 years. I'm also a United States Army veteran. I was teaching at Franklin for 3 years. Last year was my last year. It was the toughest year of my life. And I will say, I will not blame any one person, but I felt like I was one of few holding students accountable. And when students know that there's one person that holds you accountable and however many others that aren't going to, they are going to target you and they are going to make your life hard. I have done a lot of learning about trauma and how brains work and how brains develop because that is one of my special interests. I loved working with at-risk teens because I wanted them to know that there are good people in the world and that they mattered. And I still believe that even though I'm not there. I wanted to say that we can hold kids accountable, but it's not easy. It's so scary, and I quit my job for it because I couldn't do it alone. And I had to tell a teacher, I had a soda can thrown at my head. It was mostly full. It smashed on the wall and splattered everywhere. And then I had a parent call me and say, you should have just not told my kid no. And then she wouldn't have thrown a soda can at your head. And so I was doing my job. And I know that it's not all of you here. Like, we can't be responsible for everyone. I can't be responsible for anyone but me, but it is really hard as an educator to hold students accountable when you don't feel like everyone has your back, when you don't feel like you're on a team, when there is social media. I taught to kids who did not learn anything because they were just on their phones, and it's not fair to them. So your brain, I don't know how much you guys know about the brain, but your brain actually doesn't start or finish developing until around 25 years old. And so we have these students, and they're born with this innate ability to feel fully every behavior, every emotion. And so that is hard. Imagine your worst breakup, but that is a 5-year-old kid who just had their juice knocked over. And that is the same feeling. And now you, as the adult, are supposed to be the stairway for them to help understand, to help self-regulate or co-regulate with them. And I just want to encourage the idea that we can hold students accountable, but it is hard. And students deserve apologies from adults and their peers. And that's one of the things in Franklin that was one of the most important kind of pillars of what I did as a teacher, was believing that students were responsible and that they could be, and that they could admit when they made a mistake. Because as we all know, we do better when we can admit that we are wrong and we have room to grow.
Thank you.
Good evening again. My name's Alan Sarvinas for Topsum. I'm here for Parents' Rights and Education, but really I'm here after years of speaking with parents and teachers in your district. A few years ago was the first time I talked to a teacher who was sheltering in place because of an intruder, got into the school, put another kid in the hospital, and then ran off, but nobody knew who it was because they had a mask on. I also know that the schools have had segregated teacher meetings for years, but never did I, my response to them was that Lewiston has not even come close to hit the point of actually dropping the shades and actually doing something. There's plenty of private schools, Richmond Public School, they don't have these behavior problems. Okay, we've always had immigrants. The Irish immigrants the kids were just as bad as the kids you're seeing today. Okay, about a decade ago or so, the state and federal government decided they were going to force down all kinds of new DEI and all these other slogans. And now people want to act like those aren't the reason this is occurring. Okay, we just had, with no disrespect for, but the superintendent comes out publicly and rejects the executive branch. Okay, what do you think the students see that as? Okay, you just take authority and throw it away if you don't want to. Okay, so I'm not here to beat on anyone. I'm here because when I come, I want parents and teachers to actually do something, and they can do something. In Maine Title 28, Section 25B-A of the MRS, we can force Commissioner Macon to come down here and review the district with 20% signatures of registered voters. Okay, it's the state and federal government that wanted to make these statutes and write the Maine Human Rights Act to actually put superintendents and principals in boxes so they can't discipline kids. So we should make her come down here and face the music. So I'm going to read the petition that I'm asking everyone to sign. We, the undersigned, urge the Maine State Department of Education to conduct an immediate review of the Lewiston School District due to ongoing and systemic behavioral issues that create a hostile work environment for employees and disrupt the learning experience for students. Far too long, repeated and prolonged incidents of severe misconduct have gone unaddressed, compromising the safety and well-being of both staff and students. This persistent failure to maintain order violates every student's right to an uninterrupted education and places undue stress on educators trying to fulfill their duties. We demand accountability and action. The district must be held to state standards that ensure a safe, supportive, and effective learning environment. We call on Commissioner Macon to investigate these concerns, provide policy reforms, and restore integrity to Lewiston schools. And as I said, if you see me afterwards, but I also will be going out into the community to get these signatures, to bring Macon and Macon down here to see what she's helped create. Thank you.
Matthew Agron, Ward 4. Unfortunately, committee member McLaughlin is right in his comments on committee member Bolden's daughter's letter. And it's not just the school, it's at work, we always focus most of our attention on the ones who are the most disengaged and the non-engaged people over those who are fully engaged to whatever the project is in question. What we forget is there are those engaged ones that we don't have time for because we're focused on this problem and that problem and that problem. And those of you who are engaged, we don't have time to deal with you because we got too many other things. We need to be able to go back and focus on those people as well. Then we need to make Lewiston school system a safe space for all of our kids and all of our staff. We can do this by building in structure. The structure builds the rules. That builds accountability. And if we start it, as committee member Hurd says, at the bottom, these carry forward with these kids. They know what the rules are. They know how it's going to be handled. They can go forward as they go up. Not only is it going to be the rules in the school, hopefully it'll carry out into the community where we're also having issues. But we need to start with what I call the broken window level of problems. Because once you start dealing with those, it brings you, as you guys said, you start low, the structure starts forming, they start knowing, okay, we can't do this, we can't do this. I can't swear at Scott, for example, because I'm going to get in trouble. I can't throw a coffee cup at Craig because there's going to be consequences. I can't go out and grab Megan and say, hi, really hard and shake her. There's consequences. Our kids don't know that. It's not their fault. They're still learning at that level. They're not developed. They're not like you and I. They're not fully comprehended of what they're doing sometimes, but they need to be because it comes right up through. And then they get out in the real world where, how do they survive? They've never had consequences. They don't know what's going on.
Melissa Dunn. I live on Blake Street in Lewiston. I'll try to make this quick. I would just ask for school board members and any staff to take special consideration to think about the ways that they may be conditioning or indoctrinating youth to respond in civility to the very people that harm them. I didn't justify any type of violence. I said to celebrate youth in their rebellion and to witness them. And I think it's important when maybe youth have experienced choking motions or threats and attempts where in domestic violence, if somebody experiences that by their offender or abuser, they're 750 times more likely to be killed by that person. Knowing prevention, education, and awareness is really important when we're working with homeless and at-risk youth. But a large population of what you're seeing and you're witnessing and experiencing isn't just, immigrants or anything like that. It's street youth. It's street culture. It's poor people's culture. There's places like New Beginnings that get extensive training from national organizations. They do great work. They would help understand this on a level that is needed right now, because I'm hearing a lot of stuff where that training would come in handy. But I made a warning a long time ago, as long as the school and staff is not reflective of community, if not reflective of community, it's not the youth that are a life safety risk, it's the decision makers. It's the decision makers for their futures in the moment and what they determine as punitive or accountability. And they also determine the narrative on how youth are viewed or perceived or heard. And these relationships might actually be damaged or irreparable when a youth is acting out of line. We don't understand why. It could be a multitude of other things, trauma, poverty, survival. We just don't know. But what we do know is that youth who verbalize and express themselves, even though it sounds off the wall to us, they may see that adult as a safe person to be able to express themselves, to be able to be that way. And sometimes it just takes a little time and care and tenderness. Now, we all have a responsibility to street youth, and that's to be the trusted adult, to be the trusted adult with boundaries, to be the trusted adult for them to be in their mess in, and for them to know that they can come to us. You know, we're not all going to individually address systemic poverty or violence. I just want to say very quickly that I am very restorative justice. There's punitive discipline, restorative, permissive, and neglectful. Whether a youth is an overachiever or a failure, they could still run the same pipeline. They could still deal with suicidal ideation. Overachiever or failure, they could still deal with substance use addiction. Overachiever or failure, it doesn't matter. It's really parenting in the home, and then we expect to parent our kids the same way when they're in the school system, and it doesn't work that way. These youth need autonomy. They need choice. They need compromise. They need negotiation because they're being put in positions to make decisions as adults. We didn't ask for that. That's a systems issue that we're all dealing with. It's not the people, it's the system. So I thank you for putting up with what you do, but we got to stop pitting each other. The kids need us, okay? And if you need to be connected, restorative justice, I have community that's willing and wanting to work with you. We have kids that need us. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wanted to speak on this?
Good evening, Jay Zimmerman, Ward 5. I teach at Montello. I'd like to go back and speak to some comments that I heard from the committee earlier in the night. To Member Bowden, we have created a culture in which it's okay to use our words however we want. Look at social media. I hear how kids talk to their parents at parent-teacher conferences. I hear how their parents talk to me. I hear how their parents talk to you in this room tonight. We have a lack of respect issue that goes beyond school. Doesn't start there, and it can't be fixed there. Member Glenn, I do just want to nip right in the bud your implication that immigrant families are the cause of this change. Let me speak, right? I just want you to know that my students from immigrant families are by far the most respectful and engaged students I have. Their parents are responsive, they collaborate with me, and both the children and parents place a higher value on their education. And I see that from them. So I just want you to know that from somebody who's on the front lines there. That's what I see. All right. So the lack of respect, like I said, it doesn't start at school. It can't be fixed just at school. We tend to expect students to come to school with a basic set of skills, like emotional regulation, the same way that we expect them to come to school with the right clothes, we come fed, come well rested. But we are disappointed in most of these areas much of the time. So we have to teach more than we signed up for. And to Member Parks, we do have to teach at an early age, and we have to out-teach what they're getting from other sources. And that includes family at home, it includes social media, it includes TV. We have to teach social emotional skills to help our students learn how to recognize when they're feeling something, what it is, how to calm themselves to get back into their thinking brain, because when they're in their emotional brain, they do not have access to logic. You can't reason a kid out of that state. They have to have access to their thinking brain, and we have to co-regulate with them to get them there. And then teaching them how to make good choices. But when are we able to teach these things? I question our curricular choices and our approach to education in this changed social environment that is different from what we all experienced growing up. So now I want to speak to what my colleague Ronnie said. This learning that we're hoping our students to achieve, it can be done, and it can be done through more hands-on education, project-based education, outdoor education, real-world learning, like what we see at the LRTC. Make it school that matters. Give them the answer to why. Our curricula are so abstract, so conceptual. And half my students are sitting in there going, I'm never going to need this. I'm not going to college. And we can tell them, like, you got to think of yourself as college bound, but for some of them, that's just not going to do it. It's not motivating. They need access to communities of authentic care in the classroom, to autonomy, to choice in what they are learning, and to appropriate levels of challenge so that they can build a sense of competency in their own education. And I propose that we can do this through making our curriculum more focused on real life skills and through outdoor and environmental education. Thank you.
Thank you again, Jay. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak on this? Nope. We'll go back to the committee. Member Hurd?
Thank you. So, I also had this conversation with Jake as well. This might be like a future agenda item, but we did talk curriculum when we spoke. And I asked some questions about, do we potentially get funding taken away if we don't participate in NWEA testing? Or why are we only teaching math, reading, and literacy when those are the only 3 subjects that we're testing on NWEA testing? So these are the kinds of things that I will also echo that we need to look at. So I would like to, I know we have a curriculum committee. I was a part of that last term. I didn't get to go very often because a lot of it's during the day and I just don't have that opportunity. But I would love to take a look at our curriculum and say, what can we change? What can we do differently? Jake and I had a very good conversation about Finland's schools and how their education is far superior to what we have here. They let their kids go outside for 15 minutes after an hour of curriculum time. So why are we not allowing our students to do that? Why are we not focusing on what our children are interested in, what will keep them engaged? And Jake and I had this conversation again. If in the middle school and high school, if we are kids are able to go from class to class based on what they're interested in, whether it be college prep or gen ed or whatnot, why are we not applying those same things to our elementary age students? If you are engaging students, they're not distracted. They're not causing behaviors. They're not doing those types of things. We already do pull out for like reading recovery and some writing and those types of things. Why are we not doing that on a regular basis with our students so they are in a group? Imagine a teacher of 25 trying to teach to 25 different levels. It's not going to happen. You are not going to engage all of those students. So how do we make it so our students are more engaged? So I don't know if that's a future agenda item or kind of falls under the behavioral part of it, but I would love to look at that because I think we have a lot of unique situations in our district and a lot of unique students. And if we can think outside of the box here and not just go by what Maine DOE and MPA and everything is telling us to do, and we can step outside that box, I think we should be.
I think it's great looking at like other countries and places that are doing really good things and like the Montessori model and stuff from that and drawing from all of it. But we have examples of this happening in the community. Acadia Academy, the Fiddlehead School. We have a lot of schools right here in the greater Lewiston Auburn area. My son goes to Baxter Academy in Portland and he struggled so much at Lewiston Middle School with bullying and the name calling and fighting in the halls and being scared and afraid to go to the bathroom and all of those things. When he had the opportunity to go to Baxter, he is thriving there. And I get that it's a smaller school and there's a lot more, the kids have more privilege, a lot of them, and that all of those things contribute to that, but they're allowed to just lounge in the hallway and listen to class instead of having to like there's just a lot of different things that are maybe less rigid in some ways, but create a different kind of structure and a different culture that allows kids to learn in a more authentic way. And I think that we don't have to look so far. We don't have to look to other countries. We can look to places right here in the area that are doing things and having a much higher success rate than what we are and lower behaviors. And those things are happening. We just need to find ways to incorporate them. Member Bowden?
Yeah, the last thing that I want to say is it just got touched upon by a couple people, but outdoor time is so important for our littles. And I, in my visit to Montello, was in a kindergarten classroom, and they literally had like one recess, and it was at like 2:30 in the afternoon, like, or something. It was wild. And we all know that littles like that don't have an attention span past like 15, 20 minutes. And they really need to get up and move their bodies and get their sillies out and get whatever they have to say out before they can move on and refocus again and learn something new. And so I really, really wish that we could take a look at, I don't know what the policy is with recess, and I know we have huge schools, and logistically it's probably a nightmare to try to, get these kids outside more, but man, I think it would make such a difference with behaviors if we could get our kids outside more. There's so much to be learned outside.
Any other questions or comments? Do you need anything from us on this?
Not at the moment.
Nope, okay. All right, agenda item number 11 is report from the school committee chair. The only thing that I have to report on, one of the other hats I wear is working at the warming shelter that we have right now here in Lewiston. And there we received a box of gloves and handmade cards from the kids in the elementary school at McMahon. They were the cutest. I took pictures of the cards. They were the cutest cards to hand out to the guests at the warming shelter, saying really encouraging things and like life will get better and we hope you're warm and just like hearts and everything. It was the best thing ever. It actually made me cry. And then we got to hand them out to the guests at the warming shelter with their gloves from the kids at McMahon. And so I just wanted to thank the teachers and the students that were involved in that. I don't have anything else to report on. So agenda item number 12 is the superintendent's update.
So a lot to take in, obviously. There's a lot of ideas out there and things that we're going to have to look at to get better. We do have a retreat kind of scheduled with our meeting on the 24th. So just be aware of a kind of a unique agenda. That's just a time that everybody could make. So the agenda will look a little different. Budget work certainly continues fast and furious. That's right around the corner as far as sharing more information around budget. We did share out to community members and in different groupings the opportunity to go hear what they would like to see in the budget, hear what they want to support, ask any questions that they may have. So that's kind of out there. I've already gotten some responses. So that's an effort that will continue. So that's an invite. It's so we're gonna do one on the 26th. That's town hall style. But the others are if you have a community organization or a group, we're looking to find a way to attend your next meeting if we can get it in the calendar, those kinds of things, to just be where other people meet, to answer any questions that people may have and take input and to truly be a listener and not just try to give everybody the answer, I think, but to just hear people and know what they want in this budget and answer questions that, from things from a financial perspective that we do have. So the 26th of the town hall, that will be here. But the others are, again, one example of an email I got back today was from an organization in town, and they meet on Mondays, and they'd love to have me sometime between 10 and 1. So I'm going to try to find a way to make that kind of meeting work. So if you know of a group or organization, feel free to send them my way, or I can reach out with that same email. It's just as an invite. I'm sure there's 30 things I'm forgetting, but I think I've taken in a lot, and I really appreciate people's input and thoughts that we can consider and do more research and continue to get after it. We're not blind to this, right? I didn't walk in here and sit down thinking I have all the answers, but I do think we need to work to get better. So.
Agenda item number 13 is a report from our city council rep.
Thank you. So first thing, it's not really city council related, I guess, but February is Black History Month. I wanted to note that. We have a meeting tomorrow, 7 o'clock. That's our regular meeting this week. We will be taking final action on the CMP converter station TIF agreement. We also we're sort of transferring some funds around from different public works projects. And then you also may have seen in the newspaper yesterday, we will be having a meet and greet with the candidate that we've selected for city administrator. That's Thursday evening, 5 to 5:45 at Callahan Hall at the library. And then at 6 o'clock, we'll be meeting in the council chambers to take action on that contract. And that's all I've got right now.
Thank you. Agenda item number 14 is updates from any subcommittees. Member Bowden?
Thank you. Negotiations is still working on coming to an agreement with the admins for that contract. And we are about to begin negotiations. They've just opened up with our ed techs. So that's where we're at. We have quite a few meetings scheduled over the next few weeks. I wasn't at the last finance meeting, no, but we got this. So that kind of sums it up, I believe. But that's all I have.
Any other subcommittee update?
Yeah, I can speak to the finance subcommittee. The last meeting, we mostly actually talked about sort of the budget information and mostly around the communications, how can we understandably present the information that's in the budget, and do that from the get-go as much as possible. So it was mostly just talking about that kind of presentation and approach more than any specifics in terms of numbers. But yeah, so as the superintendent shared, there will be more on that in a few weeks.
Have any other subcommittees met? Member Gallant?
Yeah, curriculum. We're still working on the social studies for the 4th and 5th grade classes. We're reviewing books and processes to come up with a final list of books and processes to give. So it's going good. It's a lot of work.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Any other updates? Agenda item number 15 is community announcements. Member McLaughlin?
Yeah, just a quick one. I wanted to elevate that the school music program is looking for instrument donations. I heard about that. And my understanding from emailing with them is that they want all kinds of instruments. I asked if there is a particular number, and he said the sky is the limit. So I'm sure, yeah, my understanding is, at least from a little bit of emailing, is that they are, they'll kind of centrally take the donations and see where they're best needed. I think they want things in good condition. Obviously, sure, wind instruments, you want to be nice and clean. But that is my understanding, is they are looking for donations. So just wanted to put that out there. So it is let's see here, Matthew Wiltshire. Yeah, Wiltshire. Thank you. Yeah. He is the person to reach out to, and had put his email out, I think, already in the paper. So it's okay for me to say that it's mwiltshire@lewistonpublicschools.org.
Thank you. Any other community announcements? Nope. Agenda item number 16 is future agenda items. Member Gallant?
It's not a future item, but it's a question. Do we keep statistical data on the disciplinary hearings that we have?
What kind of statistical data? We do track those.
Okay.
Maybe just in an email.
Yeah, I'll ask it in the email.
We can connect after too.
Yeah.
Any other future agenda items? Item number 17 is to enter into executive session to conduct student A disciplinary hearing, Title 20A 10019 and Title 14056B. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by member Bowden, seconded by member Hurd. All in favor? It's unanimous. The school committee is in executive session at 8:14 p.m.